And so we've come to it, ladies and gentlemen, the main event, 2021's Game of the Year. Previous winners in this category in 2015, The Witcher 3 in first, Metal Gear Solid 5 in second, Super Mario Maker in third. 2016 saw Hitman finish first with Doom in second and SUPERHOT in third. In 2017, a joint first place of Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey with Cuphead in third. 2018, Marvel's Spider-Man first, God of War second, and Celeste third. 2019, Ape Out first, Control second, and The Outer Wilds third. 2020, Paradise Killer in first place, The Last of Us Part 2 in second, and Hades coming third. This year, it's an extensive list. It's an eclectic list, and let's go through it here. Boomerang X, Carve, Deathloop, Death's Door, Elec Head, Far Cry 6, Genesis Noir, Guardians of the Galaxy, Hitman 3, It Takes Two, Knockout City, Life is Strange, True Colors, Lost Judgment, Metroid Dread, New Pokemon Snap, Psychonauts 2, Resident Evil Village, Returnal, The Artful Escape. It's a beefy number of titles.
I think this might be our hardest year yet to get this down to 3.
And, Mark, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's a tough list. And not because, I look at previous years and I see years where all 3 are all timers. And I think it's more that I don't think anything necessarily reached the absolute once in a generation heights necessarily of some of the games that have won before. But yeah. I think there's an awful lot in that 1B sort of trench of games, the 8.5 to 9.
It's been a very good year for games.
Yeah.
It's been a really good year for games, I feel.
Yeah, not an all-timer, but a pretty consistently good thing. But look, we're going to get into it. I just want to. Oh, sorry, I was just going to ask. Does anyone have any late game or late name things that they want to kind of either throw in or just kind of mention and then throw off? Because I got one. Yeah, I mean, I it might be the same one as me. I'd like to put on and then throw off immediately Halo Infinite. Well, no, because Halo's next year. Oh, I guess it technically
that main campaign is December.
Yeah. That's okay. Next year. Yeah. Well, we'll see you next year, Halo Infinite.
I'll put on a throw off Lake. I enjoyed Lake. It was a fun game. It could have had a lot more to it, maybe than it did, and it's one of those games where it was just enough enjoyment for me to like the game, but not enough for me to really put it forward in any category. I think maybe it should have got a shout in music because it's kind of set in small town America, and there's some excellent sort of country songs that come across on the radio that are original compositions for the game. But just one of those sort of 7.5 out of 10, not quite a ham sandwich, just above a ham sandwich kind of games. But I'll put that on and take that off if that counts.
Anyone else?
For me, the Epic Games Store, who have been completely insane with some of the games they've been giving away for free. As of today of recording, they've just given away all 3 of the Tomb Raider reboot games for free, which is just insane.
That is 1.75 great games.
Yeah, but they dropped, I think it was the day after we did the last recording, they dropped Loop Hero for free, which was a game that I'd been relatively interested in, but never got round to. And I think it came to Switch within the last month or so.
Yeah.
But I picked that up for free. And that's a really fun kind of roguelite dungeon crawler deck builder. It's got a bunch of systems going on there. It's incredibly lo-fi in terms of its visuals. But it's got that real kind of one more go vibe to it. And I've been really enjoying that. I maybe it could have scratched into my top 10, but I don't think we get any further than that, and it's certainly not going to make any impression on this list. But I really like Loop Hero, and it's definitely worth checking out.
Without further ado, then let's get to it. The person who has drawn first to wield the axe here is Barry.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
God.
So do we talk about Metroid Dread now?
Yeah. You know what? I think it is time to not only get it off this list, but get it out of my life, never to be looked upon again.
I have been waiting weeks to hear this.
Harry's been a savage this year, by the way. I gotta say,
Spice Lord.
In preparation for this podcast, obviously, I spent most of my Christmas break, playing games working through things and all this other stuff. Some I liked, some I loved, some I didn't like, blah, blah, blah. And I remember once my girlfriend came into the living room when she was on her lunch break, I was off work. She just looked at me and said, "Are you playing that game you hate again?" And I went, "Yes." And she went, "Why?" And I said, "I don't know."
And then you turned off Super Mario Sunshine.
No, Dave, let me tell you, I would play that game every day for the rest of my life before I picked up Metroid Dread again.
Wow.
I would play that game backwards with my eyes closed. Let me just say,
this is revenge for my control slander. On
you might actually have a better shout at some jetpack levels if you were blindfolded.
It wasn't, and it's like, you know, it's nothing to do with the control slander, although that does help. Here's the thing about Metroid Dread. I got it. I was excited for it based on everything that everyone had said. I've never been a big Metroid series fan, but I love a good Metroidvania. It's a weird thing where the genre got me more than that actual core series of games. And first hour or so, I thought, feels really good. The sort of immediate basic controls feel good. It's a satisfying game to the touch initially, you know what I mean? It's responsive. It runs at a very crisp 60 frames and all that on the Switch, which is so rare these days. Good stuff. The more stuff you get in that game, which is what the core of the game is, you get more abilities as you progress. The more stuff you get, the less intuitive it becomes, to the point that I think I'm near the end of the game. I'm about 6 hours in. I think I've killed like 4 Emmys, I think, at this stage. I've got the morph ball, I've got the grapple hook, I've beaten like 3 or 4 bosses, to the point now where every time I pick it up, it is like I'm playing a new game again. Muscle memory has just not happened with this game. Every single time I play it, I feel like I am fighting the controls. It has got to be some of the most unsatisfying control layout I think I've ever experienced. And like, even in the glowing reviews, people are like, "Oh, well, you know, it's not the best control layout ever." And it's maybe
I'm one of those people.
And it's it's not ideal to play it in handheld mode. It's like not ideal. It's not fucking playable in handheld mode. I think on those shitty little bumpers and triggers in handheld mode, forget about it. I think this game is horribly unintuitive. I'm constantly fumbling all over myself and all this other stuff, right? So the controls are a thing. And like I said, it's that in a Metroid game, when you get that new ability, when you get the morph ball, when you get the grapple hook, that's supposed to be, or that like super sprint ability you get in Dread, that's supposed to be a cause for celebration. Now I can go here, now I can go there, I can go back, I can backtrack and get all this stuff. But it was like a double-edged sword of, oh, finally I can go back, but oh wait, no, that's on the right trigger next to the missile button, and I can't even, as I sit here, I can't even make a passing comment about what the morph ball button is, because I can't remember.
In fairness, the kind of speed booster / spine shine spark combination has never been the most intuitive in any Metroid game.
No, that is perhaps the most I've ever had to pause a game and go back to the tutorial, which thankfully they have. Nice quality of life thing is you can go and you can look at all the move list. I can't remember the most I've struggled to do one mechanic once. Forget about mastering it. I was so, because it's one you just have to run in a straight line to build up the speed.
Yeah.
But then what is it? Down?
You like down and then I think B or something, and you keep it stored for a few seconds.
Mental. It's fucking mental.
There were a couple of the environmental puzzles where you have to do that, and the challenge wasn't figuring out the puzzle. The challenge was actually just doing the puzzle. And I am in agreement with you. Like, so that control scheme is what carried over from Samus Returns. And even during Samus Returns, and even more so in Samus Returns, that control scheme doesn't work, and it really doesn't work on the 3DS. And I said this when I was talking about Metroid Dread at the time, that like my hands would cramp up trying to like use the shoulder buttons on the 3DS. It's just the worst control scheme for that. Like the combination of those two, that device and that control scheme, was not for me. I am completely in agreement. It is not the ideal control scheme. Metroid games, actually, in fairness, they've always had kind of an odd quirkiness to them. Like, they've never been the most the fidelity of their control schemes haven't always been the greatest. Like, I went back and played Super Metroid not too long ago, and I did kind of battle with it for a while. To like, it does seem a bit clunky, a bit mechanical in a way where your Hollow Knights, whatever else, do seem a lot smoother in comparison since. There was the one boss, the underwater tentacle boss. half of that, my battle with that was more based on the controls than the actual boss itself.
Because you have to use the grapple hook. Was that your issue?
Yes,
that was my
issue
as well.
Absolutely, the grapple hook was my issue. You have to use
the hook, which is right trigger, I think, and your main way of hurting it is missiles, which is right bumper.
Yeah.
Yes.
I still maintain that Skyward Sword had the worst control implementation of anything this year.
I'll take your word on that. I won't fight you on that for sure.
But Metroid Dread is not great. I will say
I love that, like you're saying, well, look, at worst, it has the second worst controls of any game.
But I will say this though, like other than that boss, every other boss, by the time I figured out like the routine in a, like the kind of Dark Souls sort of way of like process of elimination of failure and whatever, most of those bosses I got to the point where I could do most of them without taking a hit because I kind of figured out what I needed to do and like there's easy patterns to recognition. Other than the time that you take on those two chorizo guards at the same time, that was a fucking nightmare. So like I got to the point where I was fine with the control scheme. Other than the underwater boss, I agree that one was bullshit. Like the trying to use the grappling hook is just never intuitive. Outside of the control scheme, because I know that has been your biggest gripe with the game. Like, are there other kind of major things that really turned you off of it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Keep talking then. Let's.
Okay.
So we gotta get this out of the way because I'm going to push back on this. But,
no, absolutely So
I've been curious since I've been reading your tweets.
I'll lay my soul bare here. If you want to go to because obviously I saw your list and I know you had it quite high. So I mean, just a couple more things, just on the controls. Like, there's so many things in this game that I think are conceptually cool, like the guard types you fight that kind of have similar to your abilities. But again, it's like conceptually cool, but I just did not feel like the controls were satisfying enough to justify that as a cool fight. Do you know, if that makes sense? Like, I didn't get the satisfaction out of it. Also, I know they're kind of divisive. I kind of like the Emmys as a mechanic because I like that kind of all or nothing kind of gameplay. Getting away is legitimately thrilling. Could have probably been a nomination for a moment of the year, is getting away from
I just like the fact that they change up the pace. Like, they offer something completely different, like dynamically in terms of the pace.
And they're kind of there is dynamism to it because it's like certain areas, and sometimes you'll go in and they're right below you, things like that. But again, it's kind of it's bittersweet because I like the Emmys, but the mechanic where you kill them, I think, was so unsatisfying. So you have to fight the same sub boss every single time to get a special weapon, an Omega laser, they call it. Yeah. And then when you get that laser, for anyone who hasn't played it, basically the camera kind of switches to this kind of dynamic, almost over the shoulder angle. And it's incredibly powerful laser. And you basically have to find enough kind of stretch of land, like a landing strip between you and the Emmy, that you can just shoot it directly in the face to wear through its armor, right? Yeah. The problem with that, first of all, in the later ones, it's very frustrating trying to find said stretch of land. That was kind of, but that's the puzzle. That's effectively the mechanic.
Yeah, I would say, like, for people that really didn't like that, it is kind of like that is the point of that. That is like the
that's
in a kind of like a horror game sense where you have to face the thing that's coming towards you, and you have that risk reward of, because you have to blast the cannon at its faceplate for long enough that the faceplate blasts off. But so you either have to kind of keep blasting at it while it's slowly crawling towards you, or you have to say, fuck it, I don't have enough space here. I'm going to have to leave, come back around and try again.
Find something else, yeah. But again, to come back, so the reason I bring that up, though, is just because, again, coming back to the controls, playing it on handheld mode on a Switch, when it's crawling towards you and you have to rely on that little fucking Switch Joy-Con thumbstick to make a small adjustment the closer it gets to you, is not always the most responsive things. It doesn't have to have big fat hands,
Yeah.
But just so to move on from the controls, I think the other thing about it that I didn't suppose hate, because I didn't hate these aspects of it, but I suppose I was kind of perplexed by, was kind of like, I think this game is good enough looking. I think it sounds decent enough. I couldn't believe the level of praise, like the atmosphere and the audio-visual presentation was getting. I think it's an okay-looking game. It's an okay-sounding game. And even just looking at our own categories, it wasn't in best looking. It wasn't in best music. It wasn't in best story. It wasn't in best moment. I'm just kind of like, and I agree with the fact that it wasn't in any of those categories, because I'm kind of like, if this didn't have a Metroid license at it, would you look twice at this game as any kind of notable sci-fi side-scrolly thing? And I think the answer would be no, to be quite honest. Like, not that it's bad looking, but is it incredible looking? I don't really think so. Is the music amazing, or do people like it because it's a 2021 modernized vision of Metroid music? Do you know what I mean? I wasn't taken up with any of that stuff.
I think Metroid games, since Super Metroid anyway, a lot of the music has been more the kind of atmosphere it creates than the actual song composition. So I don't think there's a lot of, like, other than say maybe the kind of title sequence of Metroid Prime, a lot of the music is more there just to kind of build the atmosphere and the tension than anything. So you're not going to find those kind of standout songs. So, you know, the reason I didn't have anything in there that was like best sounding is no, there isn't anything that's particularly memorable, but it's kind of like if you think like Breath of the Wild or a lot of the Zelda games, a lot of the dungeons don't have particularly memorable like dungeon music. And there's a couple that are, but they kind of set a tone more than anything else. So they're kind of just gently there in the background. So I think that's more with Metroid. If you go back to like Super Metroid, it's a different kettle of fish. That has like an actual really memorable soundtrack. Part of that's probably nostalgia because it's a game from 20 years ago that I play every couple of years or so. So I don't think it's going to hit best soundtrack because nothing's immediate, you know, like the way that we do best soundtrack, it's different. It is different, you know, because then we always have the argument about like best sound direction and stuff like that.
And I think we've had the discussion in previous years as well that like we've had games that run high on Game of the Year that didn't necessarily pop up in those categories.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sometimes like the sum is greater than the individual parts. I suppose where I'm coming at it from this and why like I'm being so quiet on this is that like I really don't have a huge dog in the race. Like I think I pushed Dread on my top 10, but I think it was the 10th of 10 because I enjoyed it well enough. I had a good enough time with it. I don't think I finished it. And yeah, I just kind of went about my life afterwards. It didn't leave a huge impression on me.
Yeah, not a top 10 game for me either, I gotta say. I've literally said nothing for like the past 5-10 minutes. I'm sorry, but
I think it's because me and Mark are so polar opposite sides.
Yeah, no, it's been interesting to listen, to be honest.
What some other things that, like just I suppose the thing that kind of frustrated me as well about the controls. I think I said this as well, is like this was like the most frustrated I've been with the control set since like the days before we had standardized concepts of what a control set would be. Do you know what I mean? Like PlayStation 1 era.
Do you remember before R2 was to shoot, guys?
Well, exactly. It kind of reminded me of that. It felt like it's been that long since I've been. And I was kind of racking my brains. I was kind of like, it's like, it feels like there's almost too much on the controller. And I was thinking of, you know, what's a game that has too many buttons for its controller, as incredible as the game is? Ghost of Tsushima, right? That game has too much going on. Some of the button combos for the special moves are crazy. And yet, despite that, I never once had that feeling in my 50 hours of the game going, oh, I'm not really, what am I supposed to, I never thought of something and then physically was unable to do it like I can in this game. Looking at other stuff that came out this year, Psychonauts has you remap abilities on the fly, and even that was more satisfying.
I the think ultimate at the start, that thing in Psychonauts fucked me off for about maybe 20 minutes, but like but then you get into the flow really quick.
And then quick. The ultimate example, and I have to give the hat tip to Sean Lee on this, is he brought up Ori. Ori is like the same fucking game as this, but it is buttery smooth, and it's got that perfect brain to controller fusion, and your hand is just the vehicle. Your hand is just the vehicle. That game is hard as fuck. It's a Metroidvania. It has 10 million abilities. It's 2D plane. It's this game, but in fucking fantasy Disneyland instead of sci-fi Spaceland.
And to your earlier point, was a contender for best music and best looking.
Oh, no, but my criticisms about it not being in other categories, that was just me kind of highlighting. Look, I think this game does look good, and I think it sounds good.
I think it has some really like great backgrounds. I do think some of the character designs are really cool. No, this is the thing with the Switch, right? Because again, it's like you've got this game here. This is a 2D Metroid game, and it's like it looks like a superior version of a game that might have been on the 3DS, but it doesn't look like a next gen game by any means. And I do think again some of it comes down to it probably just shouldn't have been a 60 quid game, you know? Like a 3DS game would have been like a 40 quid game. Like this, Pokemon Snap, there's all these fucking Nintendo games. It's like, I don't think you can justify the being 60 quid. But maybe there's like the kind of the preconception that like other 2D Metroidvanias, you know, your Hollow Knights, your Oris, like none of them are 60 quid, you know.
It's like the reverse Game Pass effect, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
It's like, are we less critical on games because they come with our Game Pass? Are we more critical because they should have been 20 or 30 quid and they were 60 quid?
And I think it's definitely a fact. It's also what's probably weird to consider as well is that Nintendo, other than those two games, Pokemon Snap and Metroid, pretty dry year for flagship games for them.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's a kind
they're
of
still
factor,
making the Animal Crossing coin. So
well, yeah. So they maybe they
actually
don't
they're
need to
Pokemon
feed
as
up
well.
in 2021, lads.
Yeah. Look, I obviously would push back. I'm obviously the higher man on this game. I think it would be for me personally, I think it would be a discredit to this game for it to be the first one to go.
Fair enough.
But I will say as well, it's not in my top 3. So on that basis, I don't really think I can make a fight to, other than just the principle of like, I don't think it should be the first one to go, but because this is only like the top 3, and I don't think I can say enough other than just say, well, there are things that I want to take first, but it probably does sound like Dread is still going to end up going, and I'd rather like not spend another 20 minutes on one game.
You don't have to go round 2 on this again.
Yeah. I mean, but if you want, is there anything like that you would rather throw on first? Because there's a decent few things here I can see that well, I have no attachment to, and I'm not going to win.
Is there anything on this list that you liked less than Metroid Dread? And you don't have to include things that you didn't play, because
the silence is deafening.
Yeah, no, there is.
You know what?
If
you didn't, it's fine. Take it off. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
I gotta say that is a heavy hit to be going first.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the Spice Lord Barry Murphy is here this year.
And I wasn't, but it's funny was I wasn't going to do it, and then my name came up, and then Mark said it, and I was like, well, I might as well. If we're going to do it, let's just do it.
I will.
Can you go by the Spice Lord from now on, Barry? And you open a Limerick-based curry house chain.
I love that.
Just to kind of wrap this up with a nice little bow tie. Control is shit, so we're good to go.
Well, I'm just saying.
Even Epic Games Store offered it for free, and I didn't fucking download it.
That is outrageous.
Well, that's because he's had my physical copy hostage for 2 years.
Hey, if you'd come to fucking see me the other week, I'd have given it back to you.
Hey, motherfucker! Metroid Dread and Control, one of those 2 games finished in a top 3 for us one year. All I'm saying.
Well, all I'm saying. Of us, so like.
Well, yeah.
Right,
you want to talk about games that were on? Anyway, let's next. Mark, it's your pick.
Yeah, it's your next, Mark.
Is it me? All right. What does Barry like? No. I will. It's one of mine. I'm just going to take it off. I want it on the list. It's not going to be anywhere near the top 10. It was in my personal top 10. Carve is like the best thing that I played in VR this year, of which admittedly was a very limited back catalogue of games that I played in VR this year. But Carve kind of it solidified for me what I want out of a VR experience, and that is, if you give me a game that is like a VR game and also a normal game, and it offers basically the same experience, I'm not that fussed about it in terms of VR. Like Beat Saber is awesome, but that same principal experience you could do on the Wii, you could do on Kinect, you could do on PlayStation Move. It's just on Quest, because it's like the first thing that's offered, and like it's easy to install and play and whatever else, and it is a fun game, but it's not like a kind of core VR experience. Something like Superhot, on the other hand, whether you played it in like the original version or the VR version, it's the same game, but it's a massively different experience. And that VR version, for me, is an even better version of like the original game. I fucking love Superhot VR.
Man, Superhot's so good, man.
Carve is VR snowboarding, and it's a pretty like stripped down version of a snowboarding game. It's not near as like mechanic heavy, or like has the kind of it's just the fun, the enjoyment that you get from like an SSX3 that is like an all-timer for me and Jack. But it offers the experience of snowboarding in a VR space, and it works. You get that sensation of hurtling down a mountain, feeling like you're snowboarding, and that is like, if you get that core feeling, if you can add some other stuff to it, hey, that's great. But if you get that kind of core feeling, for me, that's all I need. I just give me this feeling like I'm bombing down a mountain, and the feeling of like jumping up and hurling in the sky, trying to do like a 720 or whatever. And and it nails that. It really does for me. And there were a couple of times when I was playing it that I almost fell over or fell backwards because that kind of sensation that you get when playing VR. It nails it. And it's a real kind of like unsung game of the year, but that, you know, is VR in general. That's just how it's going to be. But I really enjoyed my time with it. I go back and play it every now and again, and some of the kind of mechanics in terms of how you do the tricks isn't like as streamlined as it possibly could be. And you know, like I would love to have like a skateboarding VR game, but I kind of think about the kind of like practicality of how that would work, because there are so many different types of tricks that you can do compared to like what you can do on a snowboard.
God, Mark, I just got a horrible flashback to that Tony Hawk fucking shit where he had the board on the ground.
I know, right? Yeah.
And he's like trying to demo it at whatever that game festing was. And like, see, it's so easy. You just do this to do an earlier. And it's like, mate, everyone's not fucking Tony Hawk, all right? We can't do that shit.
But it is pretty bare bones. Like visually, it's nothing spectacular. The soundtrack is straight out of like stock music from the PS2. And it's, you know, very limited in terms of its modes and stuff. I haven't like completed it, so you know, there's not even like a half pipe to just kind of fuck around on. So it could have added like some more kind of bells and whistles to it, but it's a really cool experience. It's the best thing that I played on VR this year. And you know, for the the very few people out there that have an Oculus Quest 2, I'd say it's worth picking up. So, but it can go. It's not gonna, you know, it's not going to go anywhere near the top 3. So
that's gone. I'm next. And you know what? Purely just because I wanted to be the one to do it. New Pokemon Snap isn't one of the top 3 games in the year.
I knew he was going to
under
do
any
that.
fucking circumstances.
It's not.
I mean, I was going to cut it next anyway, but
we've already done the 12 rounds on it.
You've done that just to fuck me over there, really.
Because
he
has.
I want to stick one more shoe into that thing on the way down.
This is the year of spice.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what's going on.
I'll tell you what, if I had lost any of these other games somewhere in my office, I would have gone looking for them.
I really like Pokemon Snap. I think if anyone really enjoyed the original, most people that aren't Dave would enjoy this game. My frustrations, I guess, with it were that it
wasn't very good.
Some of the no, I thought it was. I actually think like the way this thing looked, by the way, it was beautiful. It really should have got a shout in best looking games because it looks fucking incredible.
At moments it does. At moments.
I don't have any moments where I thought it looked bad. Like
not that it looks bad, but there are times where kind of like similar to Metroid Dread, where it looks like, you know, a decent looking Nintendo game, but I don't think it, you know, if you want to compare to like other Nintendo, like, you know, Mario Kart 8 is still probably one of the best looking Switch games, you know. It's unbelievable.
Bizarrely, you're right, I think. Yeah.
But I think with Snap, there are moments like the first kind of like secret area with the giant dinosaur Pokemon when he had like the glowing stuff going on. I can't remember what it's called.
Illumina.
Is that the one? Like that's a really nice area, and they're like some of the Pokemon look like well rendered, but I don't think it's anything kind of visually spectacular.
All right, well,
Bidoof looks great.
Yeah. So for me, key phrase there. I think the game looks really awesome. I love the environments that were built around it. I think my negatives would be that some of the puzzles and ways to get photos are a little obtuse. I don't think I would have probably been able to do it without a guide. Like for instance, when you unlock all the levels in the forest, you've got to do like 3 or 4 different ways to get to like the different seasons in the forest and take a picture of all the different Sawsbucks and the different seasons or whatever. I don't know if it's particularly logically straightforward to figure that out. Like I don't think that there are parts of this game that people are going to see without using a guide. And to me, that kind of is a bit counterintuitive, but the look and feel of the game made me really happy. It was just like this beautiful island environment with all these Pokemon, and there are a lot more levels and there's a lot more content, and there's enough stuff in here that like it would keep you going if you were enjoying yourself, Dave, for like 30 or 40 hours. Like there's enough stuff like to be really deep into this game if you were going to complete like every challenge, every area, get like the 3 stars on everything, get like the perfect photos of the Pokemon and stuff like that. So if you were super into this game, there's a real depth of content that I don't think you have, say, in Metroid. Like, I think you could be playing this game for longer than you could be playing Metroid with more stuff to do and more stuff to unlock.
But
so you said it's not worth
games.
60 quid. To me, I mean, which is, I guess, 50 quid in UK money, 60 euros. But I do think that in terms of the amount of content, I think there's enough to keep you going for as long as a game that costs like that. But because of the nature of the game, because it is like on rails levels, it feels cheaper than that. So I kind of get that as a criticism, but if you were to invest time in like 100% this game, say like if not that it's ever happened, but if it was like an Xbox or a PlayStation trophy achievement thing, we'd be looking at a sort of like 7, 8 out of 10 level of difficulty to get through everything on this because it's really tough. But I also think that's kind of to its detriment as well, because it should just be a nice, simple, magical journey through the world of Pokemon rather than like, right, so if I twat this thing with an apple here, then start playing my flute there, and then I stop this here, so I go down this divergent path down there, then maybe I can get a good photo of that Squirtle wearing a pair of sunglasses. And that's just way too much.
It's the problem with the game is it can't decide whether to use real world logic to determine like how to set up certain photos, or it wants to use like video game logic, using what you just described there, where you have this ridiculous like set of circumstances that have to occur, and it's like there's no way you're going to figure that out unless you probably use a guide. And it's fascinating that for a Pokemon game that there's this not like inaccessibility to it, but they didn't like streamline, or I don't want to say dumb down, but they wouldn't just give you like a guide, like, hey, to make this thing happen, to get like a 4-star photo for this is how you do it, you know, like even just some kind of simple instructions, because there are some of them, the things that you have to do in that game that are so fucking obtuse. There's no way in hell other than just sheer luck or sheer attrition of trying over and over again, which comes back to the issue of that I wish you would just let me replay this section over and over again instead of having to make me speed through to get to it, which that's my biggest issue with the game. And then I've said before, it's weird that it just wouldn't have that for what is, you know, like it's a Pokemon game. It is going to be aimed at a younger audience, and yeah, just some of the logic that they use to try and like bring Pokemon together. But with that said, the charm of what that game is that all of those kind of little moments between different Pokemon and the way that they interact is what kind of brings that game to life. And there are a lot of times, whether it's Machamp flexing on the beach, actually specifically Machamp flexing on the beach every single time.
I see. Did it awaken something in you?
No, it just is like, well, of course Machamp would be flexing on the beach. What else would he be doing? It's exactly what he'd be doing.
Okay, I don't know what you're doing, but if that awakened something in you,
but
well done.
Yeah, like it's obviously not staying any longer. So
no, I guess it's not. I think Dave wanted to shit on the game, but obviously knew he was shitting on me at the same time, so that's fine. I was going to eliminate. I assume I'm next, unless I've
good riddance to bad rubbish. Jack, you're next.
Unless I've let my turn go by trying to defend Pokemon.
Look,
Snap.
if you want to eliminate it a second time, because I'm cool with that.
Can you imagine that? How long would this be if we all just could get Barry to fucking bury Metroid Dread again?
Yeah. My heart couldn't take it anymore. All right, I gave him his 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, other than like really like the games that I have left here, I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, well, that was my nice easy first elimination, and I'm probably gonna have to take out my second easy elimination, I would say. Before we start getting super spicy, I'm probably going to pull Far Cry 6 off the list here. So I enjoyed Far Cry 6 way more than I feel like I was going to, which is weird, but I just have this thing where I'm like, I need to play a Far Cry game because I'm just such a big fan of the series. And, you know, they've reached really high highs in the past, you know. It's like kind of buying an album of a band once they're out of their glory period. You're like, oh, I remember this band. They were really good. Like, I'm gonna buy this new record. And every now and then, like, and I always use Weezer for this. Every now and then you get like a white album by Weezer where you're like, this is really good. And then you get that next like black album thing and you're like, this is just this awful. But Far Cry 6 was a white album. It was a good album. It was a good game. It was a lot of fun. Everything in it was wacky, over the top. You know, you played a character who was trying to kind of escape this fascist dictatorship from main character Giancarlo Esposito, which I always have to say really carefully so I don't say Giovanni Ribisi. And he's like trying to escape to Miami with his friends. He loses his friends. He gets, ends up in a situation, washes up on the beach, and joins a sort of fight for resistance. And you just meet some like really loud kind of mad characters. Like the first guy you meet's got a pet fucking crocodile and he's drinking on the beach and he's really cool. There's like a guy in his 60s, 70s called El Tigre, who's like this old school guerrilla from the previous revolution who still keeps himself like in sort of Dave Bautista levels of shape just in case another revolution kicks off. You meet a bloke who's got a fucking homicidal rooster as a pet. And you've just got all of this wacky sort of larger than life madness going on. And like Barry, I think you were tweeting about this earlier, just like on the map, all of a sudden chaos can just reign from nowhere. There'll be like a cougar that like runs out and starts attacking everybody. And then there's like all sorts of Molotov cocktails going off and shotgun blasts. And then from what becomes like a peaceful sort of street out in the countryside, it can just be like a full scale war zone. And it's just mad and wacky in all of the ways that I kind of wanted it to be, while maintaining what I thought was a pretty serviceable story, which is kind of more than could be said for like the last maybe Far Cry, which was just a bit, it looked like it was going to say something and it actually ended up saying fuck all. But this one was just a lot of fun. It's still an Ubi game. It's still a massive open world thing with loads of points on the map to go to. Luckily, there's not too much in the way of radio towers in this game, but there are lots of bases to take down. And you know what? It is satisfying taking down a base without triggering any alarms and stuff. And, like shooting things out from a distance and then gradually picking off the guards and that sort of thing. So it scratches all that video game itch thing that you get where you just like, I just want to play like a really video game. Like I don't want to play a game that's serious or is trying to do anything artful or different. I just want to have a junk food experience, play through like 30-40 hours of Far Cry 6 and just have done with it and get it through it and just enjoy it. And that's exactly what I felt while I was doing it. And you know what? I'll never go back to it. I'll probably never play it again. They keep emailing me desperately, like, we've added all this new stuff in. And I'm like, I'm sure you have.
Giovanni Ribisi is threatening you.
I think my metaphor to Barry was a bit like, when you order from a takeaway, like one night when you're really hungry and it's greasy and lovely and you enjoy it, but then you're like, I don't really want to eat there ever again. But they keep texting you every 2 weeks and they're like, hey, 2 for 1 on Tuesdays, lads. Come and get your greasy whatever. And I'm just like, no, fuck off, leave me alone. And that's kind of what Ubi are right now, trying to get me to go back to Far Cry 6. But yep. So wham bam, thank you, man. One night stand of really enjoying the hell out of Far Cry 6. That's all I got to say.
Have they sent you an email about Ubisoft Quartz yet?
They have not. About if I really want to, I can get those chorizo NFTs loaded up, son. ASAP. I didn't know if you had anything to add, Barry, because I know you started the game and played a little bit around in it.
Yeah, I'm glad I did. I think I would basically echo everything you've said. It's kind of scratching that itch you wanted to scratch, clearing out checkpoints. But the thing about that kind of just satisfying your kind of itch for that kind of thing is that it's still satisfying on a kind of basic kind of feel level. The guns all feel good. You can adapt your style of play. You can go stealthy, you can go loud, you can do a little bit of both. And it looks really, really tremendous as well. What's kind of interesting to me playing the PS5 version is this is the first native PS5 game I've come across so far that doesn't have a toggle between what type of mode you want to play it in. It just has one mode. It targets 60 frames per second and hits it fairly consistently to the naked eye, at least. And it has some ray tracing in there as well. So it's a good looking game. This late in the Far Cry game and the Ubisoft game, it is kind of hard to pitch this game to someone and say, listen, you've got to pick this thing up, because that's, I think you've summed it up quite well there in terms of what kind of gap it fills, but I don't think that makes it bad either. So I'm happy it got a mention. I'm glad I got it as well. I'm definitely going to play through it. I don't know if I'll finish it. That map is comically large.
It's insane.
I don't know how deep into it I'm going to get, but I'm happy that I have it there to drop in and drop out whenever I want.
It's huge. It's to the point of almost feeling daunting when you first start playing the game. Luckily, you unlock so many fast travel locations in the game that after a while, it doesn't become that much of an issue. And you can also airdrop to fast travel locations as well, which is really cool. So boom, if you see, it's near that fast travel location, but then I got to get there and drive or whatever, easy, just airdrop, and then you can wingsuit down into wherever you need to do it. So it does help you out with the size of the game. And at the end of the day, you can get in a tank, put on Living La Vida Loca by Ricky Martin and run people over. And any game you can do that in, I've got to say, is at least a 7 out of 10, a minimum for me.
To me, like, maybe I'm way off with this, but to me, it's like Far Cry 6 feels like what Saints Row 3 was to that series, where they just went, fuck it, let's just go mental at this point.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
They invented their own country as well, obviously, to avoid any controversy this time. And they were like, right, it's a sort of South American place. We're just going to get all of the like Hispanic music and references and Latino stuff we can. We're just going to throw it all into this game and just have an absolute blast. And it was really fun.
Okay, we're back around to Barry again.
This one, I feel like I was kind of the high man on it. And I wouldn't have a top 3. So I'm fairly happy to let it go. And Knockout City. I've been meaning to get back into that game. I don't even know what season they're on, I know they have been updating it, but I haven't really touched it since that beginning month. I think we discussed it previously. I think it's really fun, deeper than you might expect, but still accessible. And I like all the little presentational bells and whistles on it. I'm glad it's a thing.
I feel like Knockout City is kind of what I was wanted to do with Fall Guys this year, where I was going to drop in every couple of months at the start of every like new season.
Yeah,
and I did with Fall Guys for like the first 2 seasons, and then I haven't touched it since. And
You're on like season 7 now, I think.
Yeah, and I feel like that'll probably be the same thing with Knockout City, where it's like, hey, new season. I'm like, well, I could, but I kind of have like 8 other things to play as well.
Right.
But here's the thing, though, with Fall Guys. I looked at Barry playing Fall Guys a few weeks ago, and it made me want to get back in. Anytime I've seen fun. Anytime I've seen Barry playing Knockout City, I'm like, oh god, I just can't be asked to go back into.
In fairness, game. Fall Guys is a lot easier to just jump back into than Knockout City. That is true. Yeah,
because like the standard of people starting to get good on Knockout City, and me still being pretty bang average when I played it. Like I said, it's like sometimes I'd be in a team with 1 or 2 good people, and they'd win it for me, and other times. Yeah, I just wish it difficulty matched and sort of level matched a lot better than it does, because I always felt either out of my depth or like the rest of my team are doing everything for me. I don't think they're very good at matchmaking in the game. That's my criticism. I know people hate level-based matchmaking, but I always do feel like games probably should have it a little bit, just because it keeps things more interesting to be around people your level, and that way if you do get better, you kind of gradually ascend and play against a tougher level of opponent or whatever. But
the problem with that, as someone who works on games that does matchmaking, doesn't matter what system you use, players, if they want to kind of find a way to get around it to match up against lower level players or less experienced players, they'll find a way to do it. It's just you can't, there's no 100% foolproof way to avoid that happening. So yeah, that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But Knockout City, it is great. It's probably one of like if we had like best surprise this year, I think it would be like an easy top 3, possibly even a winner of such a category. But yeah,
not for me.
It's not getting any higher in this. So
it's all right.
Mark,
it's
your
my
next.
feeling.
All right. I think it's time to bring the spice back up again. And I tried to play a little bit more of this recently, and I'm just going to say it. I just don't get Deathloop. I just don't get it.
Wow.
I think it's all right, but it's just not doing anything for me.
You know what? I like looking at this list, I was kind of thinking, someone's going to say Deathloop soon, and I would love to fight them. But looking at the list, I don't know if I have the passion for it. The thing, I don't know if we got into the nitty gritty of it. I think we all kind of alluded
I don't think we have had a proper.
I think we alluded to it or in an earlier category, but I do want to, I suppose, make mention of why. On a sort of guttural kind of in the pit of your stomach, the first couple of hours of Deathloop, I was thinking, this is going to be my game of the year.
Yeah,
this is so good.
I love talk about like strong first impressions.
Yeah, I was like, I love the style. Obviously, I kind of really went to bat for the music earlier. I thought that was great. I think it looks good. Native PS5 game. You can't get it on an old system. I think it looks and runs really well. And I love Dishonored. We obviously all love Hitman here. Mm-hmm. I loved the fusing of that. I think this is a game in the first half at the very least that really legitimately, genuinely encourages you to indulge your inner hitman and run this level over and over again and just do whatever you want. Pick this thing up, throw this over, kick this lad. We talked about kicking lads, all that other stuff. And I heard someone else reference this on a podcast recently, actually, and I had the exact same thought. It was actually kind of a little bit of a deja vu thing. I remember once I was playing Deathloop right up until the point I went to bed. And I remember I went down and I got into bed and I was thinking to myself, do you know what I should do tomorrow when I'm playing Deathloop? I should get a pen and pad and write out what I'm going to do to finish this game, because it's so open-ended and all the clockwork level is fantastic. Or when you're first discovering it, and early on when you kill a couple of the targets, but you're like, okay, no, she's here in the morning, okay, and so then I have to over here for the afternoon, but I can make these two over here together. And I was like, this is legitimately great. And other than the actual narrative failings of the final act, the biggest bummer to me of the year, probably the biggest disappointment of the year, is that when you hit a certain threshold in that game of like missions completed or side quest done or bits of text picked up, it gives you a mission that's like, here's the mission you do to beat the game. And it literally tells you step by step with waypoint by waypoint, go here, press this button to make that guy be there, kill this person. Okay, now go to the next section, but they'll be here. So kill, and it walks you through. It would be like, it's like playing Hitman. You know the option in Hitman that's like full hints, where it will put it'll put the waypoint on the weapon, it'll put the waypoint on the key, and it'll tell you exactly where to go. And like they have the minimal option where it takes some of that stuff away. The biggest bummer of the year was Deathloop saying, okay, fuck all that Hitman shit you were thinking about. We're going to tell you what you have to do to beat this game. It's so disheartening.
Do you know what it felt like? It felt like, because the game, like you said, it sets you up for so long. Like it's going to be that big open-ended, you figure it out, get your diagrams and your flow charts together, go full Pepe Sylvia. But I feel like they play tested the last bit of it, and it got QA tested to bits where people were just like, I've no fucking idea what I'm doing. This is too difficult. If you want this to be your big AAA smash, you're gonna have to dumb it down for the fuckos. And it was just like, at the end, it's a story of like a lack of courage in executing the thing you spent so long setting up.
Yeah, and because like the level design is there as well. This game is one of my favorite examples of you can approach each mission and each kill a different way, but it avoids that obvious trope of the grate next to the door. Do you know what I mean? You don't have the key, so you can crawl through the hole. What I love about Deathloop is the amount of times I would do a haphazard, shitty job of killing a target, and then on my way out, running away from the ensuing fight, I would see, oh wait, there's the alternate exit. If I had been patient and gone looking for that, I would have found it. It's not right there. It's not right in front of your face, but you can find it if you snoop thoroughly enough. And I was like, this is fucking great. I was like, these guys, they've done their version of Hitman. I was like, it's actually so impressive. The clockwork, the hidden passages, the multiple ways you can do it. And I had the exact same thought. I was like, this feels like someone came in and said, they're not going to be able to figure this out. People are going to get to the 70% mark and not know how to finish the game. You can't have that. And it's such a disappointment. And I think we mentioned it in the story award. It's like, this game ends on such a disappointing note.
It's one of those kind of, it has that Hitman thing of like how much fun I was having just like slowly snooping around the first time I'd tackle a particular map at a certain time of day and try to figure out what routines people were on, or try to like, there was a fun in trying to stealth your way into buildings or into rooms, having it fail and blow up in your face.
When the chaos reigns in Deathloop and everyone is alerted, like it is fucking chaos, man.
Yeah, and then you get rewarded for like earlier patience, when later on you're kind of more beefed up, you're more confident in the game, and that chaos does reign, Jack, but you can kind of handle yourself in an outrageous, loud and violent way, and know how to get yourself back to safety better than you would have if you just tried to go on a kill crazy rampage in the first couple of hours.
But I think when you unlock a weapon that has a decent range and a silencer, it kind of killed the game for me a little bit, though, because I stopped thinking about, right, well, I need to get to this point to get to that person, and that point to do this. And I just started going, oh, I can just kind of sit back, get an angle on everyone, and pick them off from a distance to get to this point. So then I can do whatever I need to set up my kill or do whatever. So I do think that once the game became less of a struggle, then it sort of started becoming more of a mental struggle for me to just think, well, this is now just kind of like going through the motions to figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
And it took the puzzle element of it kind of away from me a little bit. And then it did just feel like a Far Cry clearing out a base type situation in some of the levels, and then, you know, get to the kill of the, you know, one of the 8 evil bastards who try to track down and stuff. So that, I don't know if you feel the same way about that as well, Dave.
Yeah, I think that part is proportional to how much you enjoy the stealth challenge of games. Because I think for some people who are like, I know, Mark, we were talking early doors about how fucked off you were getting about having to do the stealth when you're still like not beefed up enough or not familiar enough with the maps to do it any other way.
I also think I don't like stealth in first person games. You know, like Hitman stealth all day long, but it's partly why I didn't really enjoy Dishonored. I like Dishonored as a concept, but I just don't like first person stealth. It's just, you don't have the peripheral vision to see what's going on, and just a lot of what makes Hitman work, you just can't do in first person. And I think that might be more than anything else. And, you know, it's a subjective thing, but I think
in other words, guys, being a spy must be real fucking hard.
And I think there's a subsection of people who don't enjoy the first person stealth, who, when they do get those weapons you're describing, Jack, probably saw it as a sweet release, as like, now I can actually play through this game in a manner that's competent. So I guess, you know, mileage may vary sort of job on that. Look, I think for me, you know, I'm one of the high men on Deathloop, but I think this finishes just outside my top 3 rather than in it. Yeah. So I can't in good conscience push it that hard. So like, I wouldn't say I'm happy to see it go, but I acknowledge that it probably has to.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
That wasn't the kind of spice I was looking for. Man, I'm disappointed.
Yeah, but then that kind of
amicable.
That's kind of how we feel about Deathloop. It's funny. Barry's reaction was exactly how we all felt about the game, which is, at first he wanted to get his dander up, but then he slowly realized that it's just like, it was a good game.
If that wasn't a game of two halves, if that game was what it is in the first half all the way through, we'd probably still be fucking screaming about it right now after you tried to cut it. But or
if it took a right turn, like, because the thing for me about this loop environment and all of the stuff, and it's why I'm so disappointed with the story, I'm sorry, this will be really short, is that you could do something really fucking, like, and I hate using this because I mean it's so cliche, right? But you could do something really Lynchian with that game. You could make it go fucking weird, man. Like, because once you feel like you've got a hang of how everything's working, they could start like really kind of shading down the walls of like the loop that you're stuck in,
and because the world is so odd, it wouldn't have felt like necessarily like this game has gone crazy. It's kind of like, oh, it makes sense that things would be considerably weirder than even I expected them to. So if they had gone wild left turn, like you said, or if they had gone leaning into the finale they were setting up that had Barry so giddy, this would be nailed on top 3. But the fact that they go somewhere else entirely and try to bring it in safely for the mass appeal or whatever you want to call it, is where it falls down.
There are 2 games left on this list, right, that I would compare to that what it could have done, right? And one of them is another game that's fun as fuck, and it doesn't really matter about the story. But the crucial thing is, it doesn't try and make you care too much about the story. You can skip it all and not really have much of a bearing on it. And the other one is, every time that you figure out a section and think you've got the game, then the next section is a different kind of weird, a different kind of challenge, and a different kind of feel to the game, and it always keeps you on your toes. And that is what Deathloop never has, and it's just such a fucking shame, because it has the potential to be the all-timers that you talked about on this list, and it just does not stick the landing whatsoever.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, I might be way off with this, but did you have a similar issue with Prey where like the ending didn't land with you?
No. What it was with Prey was, so Prey is a proper like hardcore immersive sim. and I haven't played a lot of those over the last few years. So the first time I played it, I kind of like was upgrading and loading myself out wrong and not really appreciating that like the ammo scarcity is no joke. So what had happened was on my first playthrough, I ended up getting myself into a corner I couldn't get out of, and I just stopped playing the game. So when I retried it, it turned out to be like one of my. I would have finished high on my game of the year had I gone the right way.
Okay, there's a different thing then.
Yeah, it was. I was an idiot, not the game.
Okay,
right. So, with Deathloop axed, we now come to me.
See you.
Let me have a look at this list. I mean, I guess like it's something that probably goes on my list somewhere. I can't say where because I haven't played it, nor its predecessor. But given the universe it's in, it's very likely it would finish on my list. But because it didn't, and I think only one person here played it, so the reality is it's not getting into the top 3. Lost Judgment.
So I haven't got to the point where I finished it yet, but I'm really enjoying Lost Judgment. Like I didn't play the first, and I am the known man to not really enjoy the Yakuza series. There's a couple of things that I like about Lost Judgment. First of all, I think part of my issue now going back to the Yakuza series is I don't actually really care for a lot of the characters, and it's got
I'm sorry. Part about the game.
If there's one thing about that, series.
Honestly, it's got this whole kind of fucking like wacky vibe to it, and I'm just it's just
not
doing it to me.
Yeah, man.
And Lost Judgment doesn't do that. Like it has its wacky moments, but like in terms of the story and the characters, it plays it straight, and it's all the better for it.
Yakuza does that as well a lot of the time.
Yeah, it sounds like you're describing Yakuza. To be quite honest,
it sounds like you're describing Saints Row and you accidentally stuck it on Japanese subtitles.
Who is like the fucking guy with the eye patch?
Majima.
Yeah, you're telling me he plays it serious? He's played for like he's
no, you can't pick a joke character.
Yeah,
and say he plays it
one
serious.
joke character, and also Yakuza 0, he very much does play it straight.
Yeah, like that's actually a good point.
Okay,
yeah,
well, maybe I haven't. All right, fine. I haven't played enough of them, so I'm not.
You've opened the can of worms here now.
I'm not.
You don't want to try Yakuza Smackdown.
We're not cutting Yakuza 0. It's staying on the list.
I'm calling Matt Niner in.
But
list in my heart.
But Lost Judgment, like in terms of the story and the characters at this point, it's a proper like gritty like murder mystery. You know, like from the get-go, it hooks you into it, hooks your claws into it in terms of like, okay, right, there's it's a pretty grisly death that it starts the game with, and then you go from there, and then you end up like in a high school, and you know, it kind of takes you like sort of a left turn to where you think the game's going to start with. And I haven't finished it yet, you know, so I still have a lot more that I need to do with it, but there's just a whole bunch of things that I like about it, like the fact that you can skateboard to get around. It means actually just traversing on foot is a lot quicker, because that's again one of my bigger issues that I have with the Yakuza games. The main character, I think I like him a lot more than your man from Yakuza. And yeah, like if I'd finished it, maybe I'd put up more of a fight for it, and I just haven't had a chance to do it yet. I think the overall like fighting mechanics, there's more to it, and it feels more like an actual beat 'em up than what feels just way too restrictive for me with the Yakuza games. So yeah, like I'm not gonna sit here and fight for it, but it's one of the things that I've enjoyed this year that surprised me the most. And I intend to finish that game. So you know, at some point in the new year, hopefully that will happen. But it can go. It can go.
Sorry, Niner. Right, Jack.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I mean, pretty hard to not hit someone on the head here. Although, I don't think this is going to be a top 3 for anyone. And I think the strongest element of this game we kind of already covered, and the thing that I really liked about it. But see, too much of the gameplay and stuff like that, because I only really watched a lot of it, I didn't really get a feel for it. But I know the 3 of you have. Does It Takes Two get into the top 3 for anyone?
Probably
No,
not.
should have
with
been
that
eliminated first
fucking
because of that
book.
fucking book.
Not with the book. Not with the book. To Jack's point, I would have said not necessarily with the gameplay. I don't think, even though I talked a lot about the communication aspect of it and the marriage of that, even with that said, I still don't think that it's a top 3 game.
It's cute and it's clever and it's got some good ideas and there are some memorable characters and one absolute fucking travesty.
Hey, he's memorable. You're not going to forget him, are you?
I'm going to try. My very best.
Are we going to go against Jeff Keighley? Like, are we really going to do that?
Yeah.
I was going to say I was shocked by that, but I don't think I actually am shocked.
Nah.
To be honest,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think the Matrix Resurrection's own Jeff Keighley.
possibly. Maybe Jeff Keighley is Neo,
Yeah.
and we just don't know, and he's been
Perhaps he is.
recast. Yeah, but yeah, I do like the story of this game a lot, even if it is kind of Pixar-ish. But I kind of don't understand the hype really with it. It's just
I
a
think
very
it's-
good indie game.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where like the enjoyment of it is in the playing of it. I don't think I'd enjoy watching somebody else play it, but even that enjoyment is has a ceiling on it.
I don't think I'd also want to play that game for 18 hours or however long it is. Like,
yeah, that's a little bit disheartening. We still haven't finished it yet, and I feel like neither me or my girlfriend would have that. It seems, yeah, because I remember I when we did the squirrel thing that I talked about there the last day, out of curiosity I googled like a chapter list, and I was like, I must be halfway through the game. That's like the third of 12 chapters. I was like, there's no way we're ever finishing this game. It's crazy.
You know when you're not like it, you might be enjoying it, but you know when you're not asked with the game when you start googling how
The
far
length.
you are
Yeah.
into
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. Yeah.
When
Fair.
you're just letting it happen, that's when you know you're really kind of engrossed in it.
and I could see like there's it has an inventiveness to it in terms of like the level design and the layout. And I got like a kind of Double Fine vibe to some of the creativity. And we was talking about the kind of like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids kind of vibe to it. And I think it grabs all of that really well. And for the bit that me and Dave played, I certainly would have enjoyed to play more of it. But I also know at the same time, again, it's like there's no fucking way I'd want to play a game like this for 18 hours. That's a tight little kind of like 6 or 7 hour package. I think would be perfect for what that thing needs to do.
Yeah.
So and my other kind of concern with that as well is like that story that they're trying to tell. How the fuck they're going to stretch that for 18 hours and make me not want to strangle both of those characters by the end of it? Because they do a lot of bickering in that first few hours and not in the endearing way that say a Guardians of the Galaxy does.
Yeah, I agree. I think we gave it its flowers in the correct category. So if anyone's just watching the Game of the Year show, go watch or listen to the best story part of Game of the Year, and you will hear us sing the praises of a game if you do really like It Takes Two. But I think as an overall package, it just didn't hang on with some of the other big hitters that we have left here. So it goes for me, and for the sounds of it, for everyone else too.
Ari.
Oh, good. There's a certain reality hitting me, and it's going to pain me to face up to it. Based on, I think this game has been horribly done by. I think it really has. But we're at the Game of the Year stage. It ain't in my top 3, and I feel like I'm the high man on it. I feel like Returnal has to go, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I don't think we talked too much about the gameplay. I think that gameplay is fucking tremendously. I think it's an absolutely fantastic roguelite third-person shooter. But I think I said in the relative categories, I think the presentation is the thing I like the most about it. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's great. I wish I played more of it. I kind of hit a wall. It's hard, and I hit a wall on it. And it was one of those things where I feel like I don't feel like I'm kind of making a lot of progress, and so I kind of bounced off it. It's one of those ones where that sounds like an indictment of it. It's really not. I loved what I played. I just, sometimes you play a game and you hit a certain wall and you're like, I just can't. And if I wasn't streaming it, that probably would have been me in Bloodborne a couple of times this year. Let me tell you, where I was like, this is fucking good, but it's fucking annoying the shit out of me, and I kind of want to fucking stop. Returnal was kind of that as well. I think it's incredibly well crafted, but We talked about it. I don't think there's passion for it. And realistically, even though I'm sad cutting it, it wasn't in my top 5. I don't even think so.
Yeah.
I can't act like it's being too hard done by. I guess competition is stiff.
Maybe if Garrett was still here, I know he was quite high on it when he came on our show, and that's another one to delve back in the archives and listen to Garrett's impression on Returnal.
And you know what? The more that we reference him on this, the more I'm like, oh, it's going to be a fucking cracker next year when he's on.
Yeah, like I think Garrett would actually probably argue to try and keep this in the fight here, but the 4 of us, if you're the higher man and you want to cut it now, we're not going to argue.
Returnal is like my Red Dead 2 of this year, in where I really do want to play it, but I also just cannot be fucked to get around to it, and I still haven't played Red Dead 2.
It's joining that list of games like Sekiro and things like that, where I'm just like, I think that I would, and like Cuphead in 2019, like when I persevered with Cuphead, it turned out to be one of my favorite games of all time. But the misery I will have to put myself through until I get to that point.
And you know what? I am exactly the same, except I haven't played it yet. I'm sure if I played Bloodborne, it would probably be like a top 5 game for me,
Same.
But it's just not happening.
I've gotten to the point from watching Barry play it that I've re-downloaded it, but like I haven't got much further than that.
Anyway, I'm a convert. I am a convert. It's a great game.
I've got like a list full of movies and TV shows and games that I know that I want to watch and play and listen to, like music and stuff, or books I want to read. But I know, like deep down, with a gun to my head, if you really ask me, are you ever going to get to that? I'd probably say no.
But enough about you watching Inside.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have watched big
or listening to Lou Reed's Metal Machine music.
I mean,
what was that album called? Is it Metal
yes,
Machine?
it was. Yeah,
it
Metal
was,
Machine music. Yeah. I mean, anyone that releases an album just to say fuck you to the record company to get off it, and then everyone claims it's art, fair play.
Fair play.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess Returnal has gone.
Yeah.
And we're down to 10, by the way. So not that we do a top 10, but we are down to 10 games on this list here.
Yeah. Mark, you're next.
Oh my God. All right. Oh man. What do I do here? I could go the coward's route and I could take one of my own games off that I know is not going to make the top 3, but I'm not going to do that because the longer those games stay on, the more warmer and funny feeling I get inside, and I'm liking that feeling.
Okay, so the 3 of us are just coming for your games, yeah?
Probably.
I mean, we probably are.
Yeah,
like,
you're just leaving an easy pick for the rest of us. Is what you're doing there. So.
Well, no, because like
in years past, we've sometimes decided to, kill our own darlings to spare them from the sword of somebody else.
I work better when my back's up against the wall, and I feel like some of these games,
Mark the Badger Robinson, they call
some
them.
of these games, it's not going to be a case of like you don't like them. It's going to be more that I haven't played them, or whatever the case may be. Tell you what. Of my 3 passion projects I've got on here, all right, Genesis Noir can go. I think it's probably the most creative, like even more so than Psychonauts 2, the most creative thing that I've played this year. It's of the 2, it's the least enjoyed of them because of the myriad of technical issues and bugs and times I had to restart levels because of crashes and whatever else. It's by no means a seamless experience, but what a fucking experience that game is. Like, speaking of games that is a nice tight kind of like 5-6 hour package and doesn't outstay its welcome, Genesis Noir knows like when to get in and get out and just leave its impression, and it's masterfully crafted in terms of that. I still don't know how to fucking describe this game. It's like kind of like a quasi point and click adventure. Sometimes it has like puzzle elements to it that I guess is what the point and click is. Sometimes it's like little bits of like platformies. It's just a whole thing, and half the puzzle elements are like just wildly obtuse, but not in a way where you'll never figure it out. Sometimes it is kind of like you just kind of click the screen until shit starts happening, but the whole experience doesn't feel wasted. The whole thing just feels part of this overall package of just like, look, here's this big fuck off like metaphor about the Big Bang in some space noir jazz fusion package. Enjoy. Just here. Like, experience this thing for what it is.
You should really
And-
write the box art for games.
I know, right? I'll tell you what. And there are
So
two
many
games,
ellipses in that.
there are two games that fit that that style of game this year. There's that and the Artful Escape. And I think Genesis Noir is the lesser in terms of being like kind of more immediate, and I
Much
can
like
understand-
jazz itself, really.
just very much like jazz itself. This game is
Yeah.
very much like jazz. That is probably the best way to describe it. It absolutely has to be played. It's on Game Pass. There really is no excuse. I can understand if you play it for the first hour and just go, I ain't getting this. This ain't for me. Fair enough. Like, I'm not going to argue with it, because it's a whole thing to taking. It's not any kind of immediate experience. It is very unwieldy in like its controls and how the character moves, and in terms of like, you have no fucking idea what's going on for most of it. But I loved my time of it, and yeah, it's not making the top 3. It's probably not making my top 3. So yeah, it's gone.
It looks like it would be like a best animation winner at the Oscars, you know,
Yeah.
in a year where, you know, there's no like real big tentpole Disney movie or like a Pixar movie hasn't particularly resonated with the judges, and they're like, oh, there's this weird thing with a really weird stylized art style that, you know, is about jazz and stuff. Maybe we could put that over the line. Or like,
It absolutely is like a kind of like
Yeah.
indie French art house type
yeah,
of thing.
if it was
you
in
know?
French, it wins best foreign
If it's-
film as well.
Yeah,
Of
it's the
course.
it's the artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
everyone looks back in 10 years and they're like, what? Really? Okay. Sure.
Right. Me next. I'm just, again, this is another one relative to everything else that's on this list and what I have played. I am going to have to aim my sights at, as much as I probably would enjoy it if I had played it, Elec Head.
Oh, I love Elec Head. So I feel like I am about to go around the chopping block these next couple of goes. I love Elec Head. It's probably it's in my top 3. It's just the smartest puzzle game that I've played in a long time, and it has like such a limited amount of mechanics that it uses, but gets the absolute most out of what it does. And you know, it kind of goes fourth wall breaking at some points with how it makes you like, you get to a point and you think that you're stuck, but it actually makes you want to you have to go to a checkpoint to kind of carry on playing. It's really clever about little things it does like that. Man, like I know it's not here in the top 3. It is in my top 3. It's just a perfect little game. And I hope that it comes to like Switch. Like it only needs to come to Switch. You know, there's no like kind of like graphical fidelity going on that would require, you know, any kind of major under the hood work to get it running on Switch. It's just a perfect little puzzle game. And I smiled for like it's only about 3 hours long, and I smiled from end to end. Yeah, I know it's going.
Sorry, man. Again, like I said, like everything I've seen of it tells me I'd enjoy it if I played it. But in like of the 2 games I've not played here, I know it's the minority shout. The other one, I know that there's like the other one I haven't played on this list. I know there's 2 of you who would.
And the other thing as well with Elec Head as well, it's like Mega Man, but as a puzzle game, like in the way that Elec Head controls and moves and the platforms and stuff. So, you know, obviously that's screaming out to me as well. But yeah, it's man. Anyone who's a PC, even a laptop, like, you know, it doesn't take that much to control. It is worth using a controller for. I don't think it's ideal with a keyboard and mouse, but it's really worth the 3 hours or so to play it. So.
Jack.
Wow. Yeah, looking at these games here, I think I really do run the risk of upsetting one person in particular if I cut one of these games. I could also opt for the coward's way out as well, but I don't know. I see the games that are left, and of the games I haven't played, don't know. I really don't know. Listen, I'm gonna upset someone. So it is what it is. But I feel the need to cut Boomerang X. I'm really sorry, Mark.
Yeah, I felt that coming. I was like, I hope I'm not the one who has to cut.
That was my if I had been shut the fuck down. That was what I was going for then.
Listen, Boomerang X
Boomerang
rocks.
X.
It does rock. It really does. That's a classic. You know what? On a slow year, we might be fighting for this one. I just don't feel like it is a slow year, unfortunately.
Yeah, look at those heavy hitters.
It is a tough year, but man, I fucking love Boomerang X.
I think this is the year where I don't think anyone's individual passion project is squeaking into the top three like it usually does.
I think the top ones here really have quite a degree of consensus to them. So I mean, I'm with Mark on Boomerang X, but not. I didn't even put it on my list. As good as I enjoyed it, it didn't make my list. So.
Yeah, I can't make a case for it. Like I know it's not going to hit the top three. Like even and if I think about it realistically, do I like Boomerang X more than say Cuphead or Celeste that were my quote unquote passion projects that I got to a third place? Realistically, no, I do not like them. I do not like Boomerang X more so than those two. I mean, those two are probably in my top 10 favorite games of all time. Boomerang X is not. It scratches a lot of the same itch that Ghost Runner did for me last year. Maybe I'd say Boomerang X is probably the better game of the two. I think I would say that. But yeah, I know it's not here in the top three, and I don't think I could muster the energy because realistically, there are a bunch of games that are left on this list that I'm fine being in the top three. And, again, it is kind of like me here. And as much as I know Barry likes it, I know there are other games on here that he's going to bat for more, which is completely fair enough. So.
It's also an annual tradition for you, like deep into the game of the year category, to just want it to be over and stop fighting things.
Well, it's not that. It's just 3 in a row. All 3 of my games, my passion projects,
sorry, buddy.
one after the other.
It's just the way it lined up.
Dave cut one of mine straight away.
Yeah.
Do you know? I'm not playing
it again.
I'm not playing any indie games next year. Just playing AAA games. Like fuck creativity, whatever.
But there's one game. There's one game left on this list, right? That I played solely based on the way you talked about it, and it is a small indie game, and I fucking loved it.
Yeah.
I watched you play Boomerang X. As you say.
Oh, Boomerang X is not a Jack Lazel game. I know it's
and
not.
It made me feel like I wanted to have an anxiety attack, like the warping and everything. I admit, and this is not a criticism of the game. This is entirely a Jack problem. Is just looking at it as I could never play this because I'd be constantly worried about where I have to warp to next, and seeing the final boss of that game and just knowing I'm never going to be able to do this if I play this game is enough to make me not want to play it.
It's not even that final boss. Like the last, I want to say 3 levels of that game, between the fact that there's barely any ground to land on, the fact that, because one of the biggest challenges of that game is like, if you get low on health, if you want to get more health, you have to find where it is, get to it, then be there long enough to be able to fucking load up the health, basically.
I saw you were on the pads waiting for something, and then there was things just flying at your face, and I was no.
Yeah, you've either got things flying at your face, or the biggest bane of my existence in that game are those fucking eyeballs that are just blasting projectiles from across the screen, like just this lightning beam of death. So even before you get to the boss, which is that boss whips ass. Like I love that boss, but it's a nightmare as well.
It looks amazing.
I
know I couldn't do it.
That game is probably tougher than Ghost Runner as well in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, it's coming off. Like whatever. I said my piece. Boomerang X is great.
Back into salty behavior. Yeah,
no, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry.
I do feel bad, Mark, because I was like, and I was like, seeing as we want to be spicy or whatever, I was like, right, I'm gonna have to cut someone.
I think that's less spicy than Deathloop.
Yeah,
I
think so.
I guess so. Yeah, for anyone other than you.
Well, yeah.
Background again, Barry.
Okay, there's going to be a visceral reaction to this, but I will just tell you to look at the list and listen to your heart. You know I'm right.
I know whose this reaction this is going to be.
It might be all of you. It might be all of you.
It's not. I know what he's going to say. I
It's
know exactly what he's going to say.
It's
Yeah.
Guardians.
Oh, Guardians.
It's
You know what I thought you was going to say.
As soon as you,
Actually,
as
don't
you
guess
corrected
what I was
me,
going to
knew
say.
it was
Yeah.
gonna be.
Interesting.
Now, listen. I think Guardians is great on my list. I think is it on all of our lists this year?
It's on all. It's on every. I think other than
It's the
Brian,
only.
I
I
think
think
it's on
it's.
everyone else's.
Is it the only one that's on all four?
Yeah,
the,
it's on
It's
my list.
definitely. I know
what's
Death
left?
Stories as well. No,
Death
Jack. Well, I don't know what
Door.
Jack on Jack's because he still hasn't sent me his blog yet, so I have no
Is-
idea.
is-
what
I've got like most of it written.
Thanks for the subtle hint there, Mark.
Yeah, it'll be to you for.
Let me just
later this
stop
evening.
this podcast for an editorial meeting.
Listen,
You're
I
off
think
the cast.
I think Guardians is like the safest third place bet we could. Honestly,
I think it's.
But
like,
then is that why it should go now as well?
no,
I
no, no,
also
no, no.
it's not my top three. It's like it's probably
Wow.
against
10 for me. You know, it's
in
like
slow year 1 or 2. I could see this as being like, do you remember, much as I love it and I think it is a better game than Guardians, do you remember our discussion on Marvel Spider-Man winning, where it was like we went with it because it was the consensus highest rated
Yeah.
one? It feels like, you know, this is getting high on consensus, but that consensus isn't nearly as high as the
Yeah,
consensus
well,
was.
let me
on
tell you about
Marvel
a game
Spider-Man.
called Celeste and why that should have won that year. Anyway,
the thing.
But you know what I mean? Like and look, we've talked about it in almost every category because
Yeah.
there are some incredible moments in it. But I think those incredible moments amount to an 8.5.
I was gonna say, is this the
Yeah.
most 8 out of 10?
This is
game
yes,
ever released?
absolutely.
Yeah.
This is the
Do-
most
do you
8
know-
out of 10 game.
and
Which is
do you know what
great,
it was?
You know,
Also in a better, like in a you know, some of those years we've had like 2015 or 2016, this isn't getting this high. Do you know what I mean? Either
possibly,
because like
Yeah,
much
but
as we
that's
all
these,
much
like-
as we all liked it, it's just like, do you know what it is? It's the dopamine hit of that was a pretty damn good one of those. And I enjoyed my time with it. But is it something I like compared to some of these games? Am I rushing back to it to play it again? Am I going to try and 100% to get all the collectibles?
no, but it's not that type of game. It's a single player campaign. You know, like I don't tend to play single player campaigns. Like once I've played it once, I don't tend to go back to them.
yeah.
Yeah, but there's other ones in here that are single player experiences that are
Yeah.
like endlessly repeatable and
Worthy to go.
Do you know what I mean?
back and
One I've
find
got a
stuff that you've
platinum in,
missed.
one I've got a platinum in, one I intend to get a platinum in that are single player experiences.
Yeah.
Well, I feel
Um,
like some of that is like how you play games. I don't know if you can use that as a full on qualifier.
But it's a subjective list, so like
Yeah.
it's
Well, of
what
course, of
it's what
course.
I use. It's like it's probably it's for me. I'm looking at the ones here that I would have in my top. You know, I've played 6 of the 7 that remain on it, and it's 6th. Probably
Yeah.
it's maybe 5th,
And it's kind of-
definitely not top 3.
Mm.
And I loved it, and I love the comics, and
It's kind of it's kind of like I do also think this is a backhanded thing, but I do think it's true. I think Guardians wows people because they had no expectations for it.
because
is another
Marvel's
thing.
Avengers
Yeah.
shit the bed
Yeah.
so
Not even
fair
it's not even
point.
just the
That is a
Avengers thing.
fair
I
point.
thought the pre-release stuff they showed of this wasn't that compelling either. You know,
True.
Same.
True.
and that sounds
A clever
backhanded, but-
marketing tactic.
Yeah,
I
for
think me and
future
Dave
games.
multiple times said how worried we were about this game. But
like,
then everything we said, like, I worry about the characterization, I worry about the story, I worry about the way that it's going to be, I'm worried it's going to be riddled with microtransactions. Because none of that stuff's there, I guess we're all higher on it. Like, to
Yeah.
your point, Barry, we're all higher on it than
Yeah.
we would have been.
look
But then
if you had if
knew
you
nothing
had
about it and it came out tomorrow,
Yeah.
I don't know if I would like it as much as I like it. I
And
would still like
yeah,
it.
and if you but as well, like, to its credit, if you parachuted in last year and told the 4 of us that it would have lasted this long or even
Yeah,
gotten to the short
fair
list,
play.
we would have been like, fuck you.
I mean, the fact it would have made the list.
yeah,
do you know
that's
what I mean?
even that's impressive.
Yeah, and
it's-
like, all right, fair enough. Like, yeah, mechanically as well. Like the actual kind of combat of that game is incredibly basic. Like
Yeah.
even by the standards of what you would expect, it is really like dumbed down to a fine science. You know,
I thought it was cool that you could. At first, everyone was like, "Oh, you can only play as one." I actually liked just giving you all the squad controls. I think that's actually really cool.
I'm kind of over. Like that's why I'm just like I'm not. Some people are really high on Gotham Knights coming out. I was like, I couldn't be fucked playing as them. And I hope when Suicide Squad come out, it's also not like hugely switchy.
It's I hope that's like doable as a single person. But the thing is, I think this did a good job of making that a single player experience and giving you all those tools, and they are fun to use. But even still, to go back to Mark's point, by like I would say as much as a final third of that, I was like, you know what's wrong with this? It's that at the core of it, even though all the abilities are cool, I spend this entire game running around in a circle holding R2, and I kind of wish, like, even though it's something so silly and basic, I wish Star-Lord had like one other weapon than just dual pistols for 18 hours,
And much as I enjoyed how they brought that thing into land, I think if you'd asked me maybe 3 or 4 chapters from the end, I was ready for it to.
It does
bring this thing in for land.
And like you can kind of tell, like there is like a basic level of Groot is more of like a defensive / healer
/ bridge.
Rocket is kind of more like crowd clearance or crowd control. Like there is like a basic level, but for the most part, you go into one of those fights and you just like, right, bum that ability, bum that ability, bum that ability, and just fucks you up. And to be honest, by the time I got on most of like the powerful attacks, I had like the one set routine that I would do where I'd like use, I think it's Rocket has the thing where he kind of brings them together. And then just smash them with everything else. And that was kind of like my go-to for the rest of the game.
And then outside of that, you kind of don't even learn, you kind of just smash the other ones occasionally just to feel something.
I gotta say the reboot on the guns is real satisfying. Like remember we talk about the axe coming back in God of War and something. The bit where you've got to hit it in the middle to get the guns.
The active reload.
The active reload.
That
should have active reload.
That is ridiculously satisfying to do. Is it satisfying enough to carry the game for like 18-20 hours? Probably not. No. But still fun, especially the first few times you do it and you figure it out.
It's a miracle you got here, but Guardians, farewell to thee.
I mean, it was it's just a lot of fun, but it doesn't hang.
And I may have gone hard on it in the music category, but may I say that wasn't because I hated the soundtrack. I just didn't think it was the best. I thought it was perfectly fun and good. No, I'm just making sure. I want to go on record as saying I may have gone hard on it in the heat of battle. But it's got I like Rick Astley. Like it's fine.
Barry, let's not do this again.
One of these years. One of these years, we're going to remember how heated best music always gets compared to Game of the Year.
Yes,
and this has been relatively civil discourse by comparison to like, Jack threatened to kill my descendants. Right, Mark, you're next.
Okay, I tell you what. If this game had like an actual like degree of gameplay to it, I think we would be seriously talking about it as a legit Game of the Year contender. And as strong as all of the other aspects of it are, and they are incredibly strong, the simple fact is the Artful Escape, just as a game, I don't think has enough to carry it into the top 3. I just don't think it does.
I think it's one of the ones like we should be like, not that like, oh, let's pat ourselves on the back for this, but I think it's that kind of experience that it's kind of like, I'm proud that it got this far up the list, because I think this is the type of game and experience that doesn't play for like big wide audiences, in spite of the fact that it's given away on Game Pass. And it's such a like, you have to give yourself over to that minimal game but not a game type of experience, and ruminate in it and really appreciate it.
But even with that though, like, because there are those types of games that are those minimal experiences, like whether you think of a Virginia or you talk about your walking sims or whatever, the simple fact is that this game does package itself as I guess you want to call it a platformer, because you are going left to right and you're jumping over platforms, so it is technically a platformer. And as a platformer,
is that not just
I'm sorry, it is. You're going left to right
get from A to B.
You're jumping over platforms. It is a platformer. And I don't think as a platformer, I just don't think it has enough there. As exceptional as everything else is, the simple fact is, as a game to play, while I got to the end of it and I had a big dumb grin on my face, my big thing that was in the back of my head the whole time was just like, as an actual thing to just play mechanically, it leaves a lot to be desired.
I still had a lot of fun with it. I think it's
Same.
it's a beautiful game. I think not to relitigate the conversation, I'll just say my opinion and move swiftly on. I think it was done quite dirty in the music category. Moving on. Because it sounds beautiful and
Some
everything.
wounds
and
never heal.
We talked about the story, the journey of the identity, and all of that brilliant stuff within the game. But I can't really argue with Mark's points to keep it up.
Am I hugely mad at it going off now? No. Would I have been hugely mad about seeing it last a couple longer? No.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sad that it's going, but I'm also very happy that I played this game. And I think we're in a territory now where there are just games that are just really good. Like the last couple of games that have come off have been really good games, and you can understand like why they're making it so far. But if we look at what's left and the reality and the collective experience of all of the games are left that we've played, I can see why it comes off. But fuck, man, out of nowhere.
It's kind of like Guardians in that sense of saying like it is almost commendable. It came out of nowhere. Annapurna, who are not batting 1,000, they also put 12 minutes this year. They came out with this thing, never heard of it. They got good celebrity involvement, and it's a weird little 2D walking simulator thing. Carl Weathers did it. It's about identity, and you're like, okay, I'll give it a spin, and then it makes it to whatever the last 5 or 6 of this.
Yeah. Here's the thing that it's a Mark Kermode quote, and every year people ask him, "What movie are you most excited to play or to see next year?" And I think it's the same here. It's like, what game I'm most excited to play next year is the game that I know nothing about right now. That there's a couple of people in a studio, like as we speak, artfully crafting something, and really putting their heart and soul into making this brilliant experience that is going to drop at some point next year. We know absolutely nothing about it, much like we didn't with Ape Out or Paradise Killer.
I think If Found was the big one last
year.
Yeah, or Paradise Killer as well. Paradise Killer and
yeah, exactly.
Well.
Paradise Killer, yeah.
Yeah, and we knew nothing about this game.
Still, people don't play Paradise Killer.
No,
yeah,
I know. So, like, the only person I've seen play it like popularly is Jan from the Giant Bomb Crew, and he was like, "Yo, everyone was sleeping on this game. It's amazing," and it's like, it really is. But anyway, that's another conversation. But to me, that this is a perfect one of those. Is that I knew fuck all about it. I didn't even know it existed really, because I didn't do too much research, even though it had been an idea for a while. And it just came into my life, and I absolutely loved it. And I won't forget the Artful Escape. I loved it. It was a great game.
Okay, it's me next, and I feel like looking at what's left, I think somebody on this panel knows what's coming. I think as the minority experience and probably the consensus lowest choice, I think Life is Strange: True Colors has had its day. If you want to give it its flowers, Jack.
Look, here's like there's lots of reasons I could sit here and argue for this game to stay on the list. I don't really feel like Game of the Year is the category that it would win, because I don't disagree. And when Mark started talking about the Artful Escape in the previous category, I don't think Life is Strange really, from a gameplay perspective, is all that more complex than the Artful Escape. And
it's like 1 to 1.5 levels up from it.
Just above, because there are puzzles that you can solve. There are areas that you can explore. There is value in walking
alternate
around
paths and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. The alternate paths around the town. There's loads of collectibles that you can find that have emotions and stuff attached to them, right? But really, it's there's no like, okay, press X to do this, and then use this item to do this or whatever. Maybe a little bit in the LARP section, you get like there's a chapter that's basically an RPG, which is pretty cool. But Game of the Year, as a game, like purely based on gameplay, I can't make an argument for Life is Strange to stay. Now, everything else I've already said about it in all the other categories, how much I love the story, how genuinely forward-thinking and emotionally intelligent all of the character interactions are, how well they develop just elements of the game and add like breadth and depth to these wonderful people that they create, how the town looks beautiful, how it kind of feels like a living, breathing community that you're walking around. Where, do you know what I hate sometimes in like shit movies or games or whatever is that, and it's something that I think Guardians did well as well, and it's something that I kind of don't even mention. It's when you're dropped into a certain point in people's lives and the characters just feel like characters, and you don't feel that sense of community, that sense of belonging as to why they're together. Guardians did it very well. Life is Strange did it masterfully. I just immediately felt like all the characters in this game that knew each other in this town cared about each other. They all had a very natural way of speaking. There wasn't too much expositional dialogue to explain how they all related to each other because of the point that you were dropped in at. It just felt like a real strong community that you understand, which is why what happens and develops in the game later on is such a rip of the heart of this community. Yet the person that is the main central character of the game has used this kind of empathetic power that she has to connect with people and change their emotions around enough and be able to take on how they feel and relate to them, whether it's anger, sadness, guilt, any of these things that are all different color codes as well. Kind of a bit like the Pixar movie Inside Out from a few years ago, where you see all these emotions in the form of these different colors, and then it kind of gives you that emphasis on how to speak to somebody and absorb all this. And then you have this beautiful moment where, even though it like really rips the heart out of people in the town, they all kind of come to this realization about the person in the game that it's directed at, that this person is responsible for this and they have to pay the penance. And it's kind of how I feel now, is like, I can see the three of you going, look, it's time for Life is Strange to go. You have to accept it, Jack. And I do accept it, because I this game means so much to me. It really does. It's my best experience with a Life is Strange game that I've probably had since I actually played through the first one, and that, like, the ending of that just absolutely ruined me. I was thinking about it for days and days. I think about this game even now in terms of the impacts that it had on me. But game is the key word in Game of the Year. As a game, I can't, by God, make any defense for it to stay left in this list, but it is so good. And honestly, from a story perspective, if you at all care about like story games and playing through interactive experiences or whatever, I just give this game a go and see what you think. Because I do think when you finish it, Barry, I do think when it comes to best story, I think you will probably realize that you maybe could have made an argument for it in there.
I feel like there's always one of those every year in like one category to something
for sure.
Yeah.
I'd encourage everyone to experience it. But as a game, it's up there. It's above the Artful Escape, but not by much in terms of the core gameplay. Like, I'm sure Mark would just be like, "No, fuck this, I can't be bothered."
That was my biggest issue with Tell Me Why last year. Well, I also didn't really particularly. The story and the characters wasn't really doing much for me, but just on a purely mechanical level, there was so little there for me to sink my teeth into.
See, I really like Tell Me Why last year. I don't really like Life is Strange too, but this is from a story perspective, in so many ways, this is a head and shoulders above for me. I'm very happy it got as late in it as it did, because I just knew at some stage it was going to have to go with one person sitting here who really cares deeply about it. But fuck me. I just, great experience. And it will, again, this is another game that I feel like will stay with me for a long time.
Gentlemen, a powerhouse final four we are left with here.
Shall we go through them? What we have?
So we have Death's Door, Hitman 3, Psychonauts 2, and Resident Evil Village. Now, it's supposed to be Jack next, but like at 4, where we end up with, is that what we want to do?
Oh, no, I'll see if Jack has a...
Yeah, Jack, do you want to take your final swing?
I mean, God. Like, there's 2 games on here I've played I love. I think they're brilliant. Like, they're fucking awesome. They're games that I'd replay any day of the week. If you gave me infinite time, I would replay Hitman 3. I would replay Resident Evil Village. They're fucking awesome. I have not played Death's Door. I have not played Psychonauts 2. I have experienced bits and pieces from Death's Door. I haven't really experienced too much from Psychonauts 2. I know that if I try and cut Psychonauts 2, it's not going to go anywhere because, there is particularly one person that cares a whole bunch about that game and 2 other people that really like it. So
I think you could put me on a slightly higher pedestal when it comes to Psychonauts.
I think you might have 3 people who really care about it. So I think that's the actual.
No, I would cut it here. But I know it's not going to go anywhere. So there's no point in me trying to cut it. And Death's Door, again, if you want to cut,
if I'm being straight up, I think that Death's Door of the 4 is the one that's likely to go.
That's for me. It's the 4th of 4th.
No, you bastards! You can't.
Okay, so Barry's the high man in Death's Door.
Yeah,
I think Death's Door is great, and I said it in my my blog review for it that I think that, and I think I said this on the last episode as well, or last podcast or whatever, that I don't think Death's Door does any one thing exceptional. I think it's just everything it does is done to a high degree. It's really well polished, but nothing maybe other than say like the character animation and like some of the actual characters, I think were some of the strongest of the year. Yeah. But as a moment to moment, as an overall game, I don't think it is stand out. And even I haven't played Resident Evil Village and don't care for Resident Evil, even I look at that and I'm like, fuck yeah, that looks like that whips ass.
It really does.
And the thing about that, like Barry, it's unfortunate because if I was precisely one game further back in my backlog, I'd be helping you out to keep Death's Door here. It was like in the couple of months leading up to these shows, I was like, my final 3 are going to be Death's Door, Hitman 3, and Resident Evil Village.
Right.
Only for I can't now for reasons I stated at some fucking length earlier in proceedings.
And reasons we'll probably state some more in the next half an hour or so.
Okay. If I am the sole man clinging on to Death's Door, then I guess it does have to go. I will say that if it was me, I know for a fact this is going to have no support, so you don't even need to tell me. I'd get rid of Hitman before I got rid of Death's Door.
Okay.
Absolutely no way.
Right. I would be with you on that as well, but it is Hitman's probably, of the 4 we have to talk about, Hitman's probably the most interesting one because it is that case of like, it is more Hitman, but then it's like, is it just more Hitman?
No.
And you can make arguments for it and against it. Right?
I mean, I guess, right. Okay, let's go. Death's Door is gone.
What do you mean? We're having a conversation. What are you talking about?
No, because here's the thing as well, right? Here's the thing as well. I am doing this.
Sorry, Henry gave Barry a stroke there. I thought Barry was giving up.
Because
you're trying to just sneak that one through, and Barry.
Technically,
Resident Evil wins. Bye, lads.
Technically, I should probably have Death's Door in my 3 out of this because I'm the one that hasn't played Village, and I'm only saying, hey, Village should probably stay on because, like, I understand, I get it from what you guys said about it, and I would be, pretty fucking like, it'd be pretty brazen of me to be like, oh man. A Village shouldn't like even like in yesteryears we sound like Control, and I'm not going to go into a Control slander again, but I just nothing about anything that I was told about it or looked at I cared for even before I started playing it. From playing you guys talking about it, I get Village. I get why it's probably
if horror games were even remotely your bag, you would have played it, enjoyed how much ass it whipped, and be right there with us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But with that said, because I haven't played it, I could probably still say, hey, you know what? I could see Death's Door making the top 3. And like, if Barry's emboldened for it, then I'm not going to immediately say, right, Death's Door's gone. And then, A, makes this podcast more interesting. Yeah. And B, it just, I don't know. I'm willing to let Barry engage in this, see where we are.
Well, let's do the Hitman chat then.
Okay. I will say, I'm sure we've all, it's been hotly discussed over the course of the year because this was the first big game of the year, wasn't it? The fucking Hitman. As Jack peers into my soul.
He's trying to actually get through the webcam.
And I will say that after mulling it over in my brain and replaying it, and now coming here almost 12 months later, I have decided that I'm on the side that last level absolutely sucks ass and is a waste of a final level in Hitman.
Yeah, because
I
like,
don't like it.
your enjoyment of that level is predicated entirely on how much you care about the story of those games, which once again, as we pointed out, gun to our heads, we probably couldn't recite almost any of.
Yeah.
The other thing about Hitman 3 is like, I think there are some absolutely excellent levels in it, and I think it's a very tight and consistent pack of levels. In the ranking of the trilogy, it is second for me. You know,
Okay.
I prefer Hitman 2016. Now, maybe that's because of the surprise out of the box that it was.
Yeah,
I think it's a really well polished culmination of a trilogy. I think it's better than 2. But I'm like, I'm looking at this now going, do I have this as high as I did in my head because it's still one of the top 3 games of the year, or do I have it because it was the first game I played this year that was like, that's great? Like,
and also because it's Hitman. Like there's a certain like lightning in the bottle sort of sense with that original Hitman and everything that came from it, from us watching, you know, like Giant Bomb and their playthroughs and you know, people still making content like the thing that Jack still watches, the Scottish guy, you know, who's
Big Mooney.
Yeah.
Quality.
And it is to IO's credit that they managed to make a Hitman 2 and a Hitman 3. And like, fair enough, I haven't played Hitman 2, but I have played 3. And it is to their credit that they have managed to maintain that level of excellence in their level design. And, you know, like Dubai and Dartmoor in particular are up there with like the best Hitman levels. And even, you know, like there are aspects of Berlin that I like. I think Chongqing is visually, I really like it, but some of the aspects of it don't really interest me. I feel like Hitman
I like
3
that level a lot.
I think Hitman 3
awesome.
starts really strong. Like those first 2 levels leave the lasting impression, and then the train level is the kind of like, hey, when we do a Bond game, right, we're gonna fucking do a Bond game.
That's what it all. It actually feels like a proof of concept for the Bond game more than it feels like a Hitman level. Like, I kind of want that game to finish on more of a bombastic peak Hitman note than I wanted to finish on that note. Now, does that devalue the 5 previous maps? No,
not really.
For me,
no,
it's not necessarily an entirely disqualifying factor. But I'm stuck on this, like, because I played it so long ago. Thing, it's tough for me. Like, for me, there's 2 games I played here that are just like mortal locks on this list. The debate I'm open for hearing is the Death's Door versus Hitman. Which gets on.
Hitman ended with a chainsaw tank battle, would have been top 3.
Look, it is unfair to compare the final act of any other game this year.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Psychonauts is pretty great as well, but
it does. But
yeah.
like, yeah,
I think
is like pants on head bananas stuff.
I think outside of that last level, which to be fair to Hitman 3, it was a little bit of a weird, wacky Hail Mary to wrap up the trilogy. Yeah. It is very much 5 maps and an epilogue more than anything else, to be fair. I will also say, though, and this is probably harsh, but we are talking about the best game of the year. I don't want to call it just more Hitman, because these are excellent maps, but there is a lack of wow factor to me now. Well, there was and there wasn't. I was impressed by how great the maps were, but at the end, the irony is that in 2016, I was the fucking Hitman guy. I came on here and I fought for Hitman because you liked it too, Dave. But I was bet into this game in 2016. I was there like when the day they put out a map. I defend the episodic model. I still think they should.
I think that rocked.
No, it was so good. It was so good. It was so good. But my point is just kind of like, so I do love it, and like Hitman 3 is great, and it was certainly on my list. But I'm just kind of like, when I look at this kind of like, and it isn't, I don't suppose it's probably excellent at any one thing, but when I look at the amazingly crafted, new, bespoke, unique thing that is Death's Door that just came out this year, and then it's kind of like Hitman 3. Oh, I really don't want to be disparaging and call it like a map pack, but do you get what I'm going? But at the same time,
it's more than a map pack.
I don't think Death's
Door
is that unique.
Is it? Yes.
I don't think Death's Door is that unique. You know, it's like, it's a great isometric Zelda type dungeon crawler, but I've played a whole bunch of those, and it's a really good one of those. But I don't think it's a unique game by any means.
But that's not what I mean by its kind of bespoke nature. I've played a million collectathons like Psychonauts and a million.
Oh, you mean just in terms
games.
of Hitman just being like just more Hitman?
I suppose I don't know if I'm communicating, but what I just mean is that bespoke Death's Door is so finely crafted, and even though it's not reinventing any wheels, I still think of it as quite unique. It's kind of weirdly Zelda Soulsy in a weird way. It has an audio visual package that doesn't quite look like anything else. You know,
it's unique not in so much as doing something entirely new, but in the way that it marries things that you recognize from other things.
Yeah, and in fairness, it does have a dark humor to it that and a like a kind of a self-awareness about it to some degree that Zelda could never do. Like Zelda sometimes is very po-faced.
Po-faced, absolutely, yeah.
Like so,
they kind of stuck like that though. It's kind of like, you know how Paper Mario gets to fuck around and play with the Mario characters. Wouldn't it be awesome if there was like a Zelda equivalent version?
I mean, kind of Cadence of Hyrule, I guess, is the closest they got. So even Minish Cap to some degree as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I wish?
I'm gonna put this out there as well, just on the Hitman thing. Is like, I wonder how much this game benefited from having the oxygen of the fact that almost fucking nothing came out for about 5 months this year.
I don't think so. I still think Hitman would have been.
Oh no, it still would have. It still would have featured really highly. That's for sure.
Everyone seems to be illustrating the knocks on Hitman, though. I feel like someone needs.
I think like the positives are pretty like.
Look,
it's kind of my point. They're like a known quantity.
No. Like, so they really like. Hitman 2 genuinely did feel a bit like more Hitman, right? Hitman 3, okay, Dubai, right? Dubai was kind of showing off, look how pretty our game engine is now. Like, look at the fucking sonic leap we've taken from Hitman 2016 to Hitman 3. And it looks incredible. It is a standard Hitman level. And then every level afterwards, they do something a little bit different. They change things up, right? Okay, you've murder mystery in the second level. They haven't done that before. Then you have Berlin, which is a bunch of stuff where you've never had targets that aren't pre-marked. Yeah, you can turn off the vision, like the Hitman vision, the instinct, and just, you know, wing it and kind of figure out who the targets and stuff. But they've never done that before, where you have to figure out the targets via espionage and figure it out. And Berlin is massive, right? It's fucking huge. It's really daunting the first time you have to do that. And then you have like the cool start in like the weird country lane, and there's the petrol station, and it's so atmospheric. And they did the same thing with the start of Dubai, you know, where you land on the side of the building and you go down in, and they did try and genuinely make differentiations and points of differentiation to these levels the first few times that you would have played them, to make you feel like, okay, there's something a bit different going on now. Now, if you want to go back and replay it, you can replay it in the traditional Hitman style of like trying to get all the challenges and stuff to get the platinums, and you can do all of that. But they tried something a bit different. Chongqing felt like a completely different feeling of Hitman level to me as well. Like the inside, outside, the slums, like that really high-tech data building where there was all of the different levels of key cards that you had to get. Like it felt Metal Gear Solid to me.
I think that is sneaky, like one of the best maps they've ever done,
because
it's like the unique twist on it. And I do back you that what they've done is they've done Hitman, but not Hitman with a lot of these maps, where it's like, in terms of the maps and the mechanics and the systems, it's all Route 1 Hitman. But in terms of the slight twists they put on targets or whatever, it does change the game a little bit, and it makes every map feel completely different in a way. But Chongqing kind of does like is a real almost like scrap the standard, like here's a big open space, you know, fuck around with it. Like, this is trying to one level at a time invade a fortress.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is really cool. And I don't think I've had that in those 3 games, had the kind of sweaty palm on the controller, I like, am I going to fuck this up sort of feeling. I feel it was something they maybe tried to go for with Colorado and absolutely fucked it in the 2016
Look, Colorado is a disaster. We don't need to talk about it. It's probably
the worst map level in the trilogy. That isn't on
one thing I want to say, and to kind of like harken back to obviously this one like gaming moment of the year with Dartmoor and Knives Out, and like Dartmoor is for me is the most memorable level in the game. It has the most memorable story in the game of the things that you do remember about the story of that game in this kind of self-contained like murder mystery and whatever. But does that all be what it is just because of how good Knives Out is and how much I love Knives Out?
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like Knives Out didn't invent murder mysteries, right?
No. But it's so clearly like it is so indebted to Knives Out that you cannot look at that and think that those two there's no connection between the two.
If Knives Out hadn't been released, would they have done an Agatha Christie themed level? I don't think so.
Here's the thing though, we don't know that.
I don't think that takes from it either.
No, I don't think it does. I don't think it does. But
my thing more on Dartmoor, and I think Chong King is probably actually a better example of how Hitman 3 did change things up a little bit. Like I think Jack said, it is a bit Metal Gear Solid. It's a bit more traditional stealth mixed in with the Hitman thing. Think about Dartmoor, as excellent as it is, completely agree it should have won Moment of the Year. Like, that's not really changing the game. It is effectively just a more elaborate version of the mission stories they've already had in the previous
that's the one
two
I
games.
think is the
it's
iterative.
It's fucking tremendous. It's absolutely fucking tremendous. But it's like, at the end of the day, I was like, this is a very funny, elaborate one of these. But it didn't feel like, oh, they've changed the game. And even Chongqing, it's like, yeah, it was a little bit more traditional, stealthy, a little bit more combative. It's like, it is like a fortress. It's a little bit more kind of, you're basically kind of dead if anyone sees you from this point forward, which I kind of did like. But nonetheless, I still didn't feel like, again, this, back to my point, it felt like this is what I kind of expect almost. It's kind of what my standard would be for, okay, this is your whatever it would be across all these years, 12th Hitman map. Like, I'd expect you to throw some twists in there. I'd expect you to go in some slightly new directions, but I just don't feel like they, really changed the game. And I just feel like,
that's the thing though. The bar's already so high.
There is that.
The Hitman bar is so high. Like, the video game itself is so fucking good. Like, it is the best, pretty much the best version of itself that it could be.
Think of it this way, right? So in 2016 we had Hitman and Doom, and for me, I preferred Doom to Hitman. But you look at like those two games, and obviously they were the two best games of 2016, and I think across like the board, most people would say they were probably the two best games.
Every outlet was basically flip a coin between the two.
And you think about what's happened since. Think about what fucking Doom Eternal is, and like the levels of consistency that Hitman 2 and
Don't
Hitman
get me
3
fucking
had.
started on that.
So there is a point to what Jack is saying there. Like, that the standard for Hitman 1 was incredibly high. And I do think that they have maintained that, there are dips that are going to happen, but there are some really fucking good levels in Hitman 3. And it's I don't think it's just as easy to say that it's just more Hitman, because to some degree it is, but that's still like, to create those levels, to have those intricacies, to have those like small kind of basically like mini death loops, like it's not just one whole game, it's individual levels that have their own unique characters and mechanics going on.
When you compare it to stuff like Doom Eternal, if only Doom Eternal had just been Doom 2016 again.
Just more Doom.
That tried to change too much about its core gameplay, and maybe that is another thing to Jack's point, is that they didn't fix what wasn't broken.
It is kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't.
But also, do we get a shout? And I know like it's probably more of a discounts as previous stuff, but the fact that if you've bought the previous two games, despite the first day struggles that they had, right? But anyone else now, if they want to, all their previous Hitman, like maybe they
it does have to be Game of the Year editions of the other two.
Like, but one of them I didn't have the Game of the Year edition. And
I'm not sure it does. I'm not sure it has to be that.
Oh, I thought it did. Was that something?
If you want those DLC, maps,
it's the DLC maps. And like the fact that you can bring and then for nothing, because you've already played those games and they are up-resed and polished and made beautiful. And you know what? There wasn't any issues with them. There's no like, this is the definitive edition of Hitman 1 and we're taking Hitman 1 off the store and you have to play it playing it under the same umbrella, and you can play the whole World of Assassination trilogy end to end in the same game with the ultimate up-res graphics. Like, there has to be something said.
I get
for
it.
that.
I mean,
but
again,
I think
yeah,
I don't think
again-
it counts in the Game of the Year conversation.
No, but-
However, it is fucking awesome, and no one has really done anything like that before in video games that I can remember, and given you that level of
Hey,
ease to do.
There's a
Motherfucker,
specific
may I tell you about a little game called Pokemon Gold and Silver?
Yeah, well, I was going to say Pokemon in general have been doing this for years, but what I was going to say actually is there's a reason. Unfortunately, Hitman and IO should be the industry standard for that kind of thing.
They should.
I don't think that's a case of credit for IO for doing that. It speaks more to like how disgusting the practices of your EAs and Activisions, whatever else, for not meeting those standards.
Yeah, I support their game, and I
Because
said
they have control over, like,
but
as
they
far as
support
I'm aware,
their
they have
game
the-
better
they
than
do.
anyone else.
They do, but that
Right.
should be the industry standard. I think
And
that's more like talks about how disgusting the other publishers are.
But it fucking sucks. But also, they should at least, like, I'm not saying like flowers, but they should get a thumbs up for
Yeah,
doing
of
a
course,
good job
absolutely.
with their, and actually
100%.
caring about the people in their community.
Gentlemen, I don't mean to be that guy, but we are no closer to deciding what leaves the top
Look,
four at this
I
point.
mean, there's Hitman. I think it's either joint first or second for me in the way I've played this year.
The discussion now has made me think that Hitman squeaks it for me over Death's Door into the top three. So I'd be willing to throw my stuff in with Jack here on this.
Honestly, I could flip a coin on it. I for me.
You want to flip a coin or?
Can I flip this guy somehow? I don't know.
I mean, don't flip a coin.
I do like Death's Door as well. You know, like that crow. He just like he fucking has a mission and he just fucking does it. You know, like fair play to him.
Chronos.
And the Lord of Doors, he's great.
The Lord of
Hothead.
Doors is class.
I mean,
love
if
the Lord of Doors.
you know, it's not like tit for tat. We're going to give them we're both going to give them a GameSpot score of 9.6 versus 9.5. So it's not that, but I'm like, Death's Door has like, it's so minimalist, but the story that it does have is so actually affecting, and it absolutely nails what it's going for from a story standpoint. And like, it's kind of like we've all kind of, because it isn't crucial to Hitman. So that's kind of why we do it. But we do all kind of just shrug our shoulders. Well, the story sucks, but you know, we all just kind of do that. And it's
Yeah,
like,
but then the
but
gameplay of Hitman, like versus the gameplay of Death's Door, like the things that you can do, like
they're
that
different games.
balances
But
out
it's
the
not
scale.
apples and oranges.
But it's not
Yeah,
most
yeah.
game of the year. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not most elaborate AAA
Yeah.
game. It's game of the year. You know, it's.
I as much as
Hitman.
I've been with you some aspects of Hitman, I can't go with you on
Well,
that.
I mean, hang on, gameplay does matter.
Yeah, it
No,
does.
no,
but
absolutely,
it
it does,
does.
it
But
does,
they're
but-
different
it's-
games.
Yeah,
They're
it's
two different games.
completely
They're two
different
different
now.
games, 100%. But I honestly, just from like watching gameplay of one and watching gameplay of another,
I know, but like this
But-
is not a Life is
one
Strange.
has a better story, one
this is
looks
not a
more
Life is
fun to
Strange,
play.
Artful Escape thing here.
Well, you can't.
know?
I mean, you
Yeah.
can't tell. You can't tell by looking at it because it's
Yeah,
because, like I
yeah.
said, it's like some people compare it a lot to Zelda, but to me, the Souls comparison it is a
again-
millimeter second reaction
Yeah.
based kind of
Yeah.
action game. It
Again,
really is.
again, I'm completely with you now on Hitman squeaking over Death's Door, but like on the gameplay thing, like comparing the two of them.
They are apples and
like,
oranges.
it's-
My-
You
my
can't compare
biggest
them,
issue-
but we have to because that's
My-
where we are at the moment.
Yeah, but they're doing two different things.
Yeah,
And
but that's
my-
why they're
my
both still
biggest
on the
issue-
list.
My biggest issue with Death's Door, actually, and maybe it was my expectations going in because it's Acid Nerve and because of Titan Souls, is that you get that first boss encounter and you're like, oh yeah, this is a really great, I hate making the fucking Souls comparison, but I guess you got to do it. Has that kind of Souls comparison to it. And I thought the game was going to give me a whole bunch of those. And I actually felt a little bit underwhelmed at the end that I didn't get more boss encounters, more just kind of like, just big kind of creative bosses that like give you that challenge. And the ones that are there are fucking awesome. And, we've had a great year for bosses in video games, Metroid Dread included. But I do feel that Death's Door just didn't have enough. And I feel like it was going to have more. And I don't know if that's an expectation thing because of Titan Souls. And that game is basically just one giant boss rush. I did feel like Death's Door was going to have more of that. And it didn't. And yeah, that's
When you talk about because I didn't even really think about the thinking about all the great things this game, like the elder crow that you fight in like the big empty white void.
That elder crow boss is fucking amazing.
And like contrasted against like all its attacks, which are like sending out other crows or its feathers flying all over the place. It's like visually unbelievable. And then there's kind of the story context when you're fighting it in. It's really quite affecting it in. This is like on top of all the effectiveness of its story and how it conveys the themes. It also has like barely any dialogue to speak of. It's like, you know,
but it
like
uses all of that dialogue like so well, so effectively,
so well.
Like the grandma when she twists, like because throughout like you're going around her mansion and you're breaking shit, and she's like getting slowly more agitated to the point she's like, right, you little shit, I'm fucking done with you now. And it's such a great little twist.
I love that. Like you're like you have to activate a certain number of like switches or something in her castle before you eventually fight her. But it's always like you fight your way through, you solve all these puzzles, and then there you activate. There's one switch, and then you come back, and this is actually really underrated. I wish I kind of put this in moment now. On your way back from activating switch 1, let's say, to go back to the lobby and go and activate switch 2, she's standing in the hallway you just walked through as you backtrack through it, and she's looking at you going, "You little fucking shit are pressing those switches. You're not supposed to be doing that. I'm going to get mad at you if you do that." It's so affecting because she's this big, very jarring, and it does the eyes follow you across the room thing as you move your character. It's so great. There's like it's a real little touch game as well. It's a real proper kind of just not necessarily stop and smell the roses, but the little things you'll pick up on as you play through it. I mean, I'm Jack's Hitman. I'm Death's Door.
I've just been like devil's advocate here. Like I've been standing on each of your shoulders. Yeah, your game's really good. I really like your game.
To be honest, me and Jack have picked our sides. It's time for you boys to flip your coins.
Mark's just like, maybe I should fight him. Into your ear.
Yeah.
All right. How about this? Let's get rid of Resident Evil. Right. We'll keep the other two, and you know. No, I am of course joking. I am definitely joking.
Okay, let's just fucking we'll just go around there because I think one thing we can agree on is Psychonauts 2, as much as Jack might not agree, Psychonauts 2 and Resident Evil Village are probably in at least the top 3, right?
I will unsheathe swords should anyone try to knock them out of the top 3.
Yeah, well, because there's at least 3 people for each of those games, which I don't think is the case for Hitman and Death's Door.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think at this point, we should just go around the room and see what happens if we try to decide which of the 2 that we want.
Okay. To maximize the drama, I will do it in the following order. Jack.
Hitman, obviously.
Barry.
Death's Door.
I will say Hitman.
You're such a shit. Can't believe you let Dave get away with that, Mark. That's outrageous.
What?
I did it to Mark in the previous category as well. Oh dear. But
I'm
Barry
willing to
mentioned
say,
the little touches in Death's Door. By the way, I can't believe I let you get away with that. There are more than a million little touches. In
of course there. Listen, I love Hitman. I love Hitman. Yeah. Absolutely.
Can I just say, Barry fucking hates Hitman, right? That's what he's
I know he's trying to kill it. He's trying to ruin it.
Can I just say, by the way, like I know it's unprecedented, but on the off chance that we end up stuck on this, we've never done it for something that wasn't a winner. But we could consult which of these 2 games finished higher to see which squeaks into the top 3.
No, you're not letting Mark off. You fucking choose, you son of a bitch.
No, Mark has to choose. But if that honest choice locks us, because I don't want him to feel now that he had because the other thing is if I didn't say that, he'd feel like he had to pick Hitman so that we wouldn't be locked.
Not to get too meta on all this, but as we've seen, because we've all commented on it as the poll has gone by, the popular game will absolutely demolish the smaller game.
Yeah,
in my experience on this
probably
poll.
True.
I understand where you're coming from, but like Death's Door will get walked on that.
Right, then it's a fucking duel with pistols at dawn. Then for the 2 of you, I was trying to spare bloodshed.
Shut the fuck up for a second, right?
Mark wants to go to sleep now.
I think on the basis that I would probably say the highs I had with that game were higher. It did take gaming moment. I'm going to say Hitman 3.
Okay. Sorry, Barry.
Because I will say, like, when I was looking at this, when I was looking at this list, like before we started doing this and over the last couple of weeks, and I was thinking about like, what do I think the top 3 would probably look like? I never really honestly saw Death's Door making the top 3. Now, my biggest surprise, I thought Guardians was going to be the safest lock for number 3, and I was well off with that. But I never saw Death's Door making the top 3. It just, and even in, you know, my personal thing, you know, like I've seen some people like Garrett C's favorite game of the year. It's not a top 3 game for me, but my top 10 is fucking weird and all over the place with Boomerang X and Elec Head and whatever else. But I do think that the highs that I had with Hitman 3, and most of that is really based on those first 2 levels. I do think I will take that over a very solid, a very consistent, and Death's Door is a great game. People should play if they haven't already.
You know, Jack, you probably could have saved us 25 minutes if you reminded everybody of killing that guy in the wine pressing thing.
Oh, mate, the fact you can smash a human being to death with a giant wine press.
That is pretty good. I had forgotten about that. Yeah.
By the way, the first two levels of every Hitman game absolutely slap. Like,
that is a good. That is their thing. I think. Yeah, the first 2 they really get you.
Right now,
Mark, you haven't played Hitman 2, which you got to play through Miami, mate. Jesus Christ!
Right now, we've settled like what third place is.
Yeah, I think.
Hang on a second.
No,
I'm kidding.
Yeah. I think it's fair that because it just squeaked through, that Hitman is our third place, right?
And it is Hitman 3, I guess. So,
okay, yeah.
2016's game of 2021. Well done, Hitman 3.
Look at the fucking bitterness. I love it. Give me it.
You can take your little game about the birds.
I will.
Guy with a keyhole for a face, and Lloyd Grossman the fuck off. All right.
Yeah. I will. When Death's Door 3 comes out, wait till you hear. Oh boy.
You fucking
if you
going
can play
full
Death's
Richard
Door
Keys, daft ground, silly little game.
I'm gonna be so worried if like Death's Door 2 has jump pads.
Yeah. Oh mate.
Yeah. This is Dave Ryan's wet dream, this top 2.
I'll tell you. This is a quality. And you know what? I love Hitman as well. So like I'm fucking quids in here.
Good game.
I mean, Hitman rules.
Right. So what do we fucking do here, lads? Because
I think it's your time to have a little chat, Dave, because I feel like Jack and Barry were dueling for the last 10, 20 minutes.
Yeah, obviously, like I'm the noted highest of high men on Psychonauts, and I think I've talked about that longer than any of us.
Can I just say, Dave, and I want to hear, you're not. I'm just as high. Psychonauts 2 is my favorite game.
Sorry. I have verbalized my highness on this game more than any of us. Let's put it that way. I was convinced until I played Psychonauts 2 that Village was my game of the year. That was it. It was a mortal lock for me. And now I'm kind of torn in a way I probably haven't been since the first time we did this. And it was literally a coin toss in my head between Witcher and Metal Gear Solid 5. Yeah. Or possibly, I know I was kind of leaning more Hitman in 2016. So it's the toughest in a few years. We'll put it that way for me.
That seems fair. Yeah.
I feel like Resident Evil Village is just a triumph of that. It's interesting the way the series has moved into this trilogy of first-person games. I thought 7 was excellent. I was a real high man on 7. It was one of my favorite games of that year. It leaned way more into the kind of PT-esque horror. Like it did a bit where it kind of does what I think Village does better, in that it tries to bring a couple of different influences and subgenres of horror into it. Like you had the son with the torture porn kind of section, and you had the kind of like the wife had the like the kind of bug phobia section and stuff like that. But I think a lot of the ideas that are planted in 7 come to full fruition in Village. And we talked about that idea of all the compounds around the village, which are 4 different big bosses. And then the 5th, the leading up to the confrontation with Mother Miranda. It feels like 5 separate, excellent, like episodic horror movies, or like one of these kind of like prestige mini series. Everything feels a little bit different as my dog chews on his pizza squeaky toy. If you hear that in the background. That's what that's been the whole time. He keeps falling asleep on it, and now he's standing up beside me with it in his mouth.
Right idea.
Yeah, it's just an incredible experience. It's the most fun I've had with a game this year. It's the most kind of fist pumping the air with "that was awesome." It's the most I've laughed out loud. It's the most I've thought that game just whipped ass. At points, it felt like a great horror movie, a great action movie. I loved the kind of the feel of the village. I think the environment design in this game is incredible. I think it was one of the ones where they really got the balance right on the ammo and weapon scarcity. I think it did a really good job of like when it made sense for you to really be struggling and thinking about your weaponry, it was harder for you to find stuff. And then at the bit where the game really wants you to start ripping into those lichens and just plugging them with bullets, they did very well at kind of making sure you were well stocked for that. It obviously, again, it's an apples and oranges thing that like Psychonauts tells like a surprisingly personal and emotive and affecting story so very well in a very colorful and beguiling way, whereas Resident Evil tells a very arch and campy and ridiculous story in a really whip ass sort of way. Like it is very hard for me to separate these games. They are so fucking different.
Yeah, it's like when we were comparing Hitman and Death's Door and like, how do you compare these two?
One of the similarities between the two of them as well is that I had a similar feeling finishing Village as I did Psychonauts 2. It was like, if the sequel to this came out next week, I would be fucking stuck straight into it again. If a big kind of like story DLC comes out for either one of these games, I'm getting back into it. You know, like that's the thing. I want to stay in these worlds. It's very appropriate for me, and I think for the year that these are the two that finish first and second, because I think they're in a year, I think, where we still, because of everything that's going on, want to escape into worlds we can freely roam, and maybe, particularly in the case of Resident Evil, take out our frustrations and our bad moods on the enemies in the world. I think these are the kind of escapism that drew me into video games as an art form and as a pastime my whole life. So I just think they're both excellent. Like, personally, they're both 10s for that. You know what I mean? They're incredible. And I know I spent, like, I don't want to sound like I'm shitting on Hitman, but it's more that we've acknowledged where Hitman's going to sit on this. So I don't want to try and re-legislate that. I'm not saying, and Hitman did nothing for me. I spent like 2 months like solidly playing that game every single day. But yeah, these were such just special experiences for me. I don't know where the rest of you guys sit coming into this, because I'm really like, Jesus, I'm torn.
Yeah.
I mean, you know where I sit, but that's not my fault. If I'd known how much Psychonauts was going to dominate the conversations in every category, including categories where, having gone back, like, I'm like, I really don't get it even, but I wish I fucking played it so I could contribute. But what you just said about Resident Evil, I want to back up on, and I will go as far as to say it gets every element that I want in a video game absolutely spot on. I really like the story. I really enjoy playing through the game. It is as fantastical as a video game you want to be, while feeling grounded enough that you can kind of buy into being in the situation as the character. Like, everything about that, if you're making like one of those pizza charts, you know, where there's like loads of different points all the way around, Resident Evil was hitting like 8 out of 10 in every single one of those, and a lot of them it will hit 9 or 10 out of 10, and it covers every single facet of what I enjoy and love about video games so much. And the reason, again, that's been brought up in every category as well is because it fucking deserves it. It's so good. I never thought I would feel like this about a Resident Evil game again, you know, after playing like 2 and stuff when I was a kid, and 4 was great. And, you know, 7, I didn't quite get back on the train with 7, but I just remember the first time or first day or something that David played this, and he was like, man, you got to fucking play this game like right away. And I was like, oh, okay, there might be something that's going on here. And I managed to blag it off a friend, and it's like, well, fuck, man, when this game's discounted, I'll buy it and I'll play it again, because I want to see if it feels the same way to play through the whole game again as it did the first time I was playing it. And I'm not even a massive horror game guy, but I just, goddamn, is this a great experience from top to tail. It's the perfect length as well. Yes. It never drags. even that bit in the factory where you're getting a little bit frustrated, the fact that you have the feeling of climbing, you know, and a lot of the other levels, you're kind of, you know, on a point
through,
and you're working your way through but this, you're climbing and you're unlocking elevators in different areas, and with that elevator you can then have like the Duke and buy different stuff and make it a little bit easier to fight those like monstrosity half Terminator creations of Heisenberg. And then it's like, right, well, what do you do at the end of the game? Oh, okay, what we're going to do is we're just going to go absolutely fucking mental. You're going to have as many bullets as you like. You can destroy all of this stuff. All of the like careful, you know, smart gameplay that you've been up to that point is just blown wide. And then there's this massive, like, really fucked up final boss, Mother Miranda, with all the, you know, just like metasite, sorry, shit, just the mold all over the place. It's going crazy. And it's just the really satisfying climax. And like Dave said, it's like the way they end the game with that thing with Ethan's daughter, where it's like, fuck, if Resident Evil 9 came out tomorrow, I mean, I'd like try and get the day off work so I could play it. That's how excited I am by what they're going to do with this series. And again, if it's another trilogy again, like Hitman was a trilogy, if they do the same thing here and carry on this story and then end it, fucking hell. And I felt like I had to get this out now because I know you guys are going to talk about Psychonauts. I really can't contribute to that conversation. I am very sorry. I really do. For the final time, I'll say it. I really wish I got to the game, but Jesus Christ, like, of these two remaining, obviously is where my flag is going to be planted for now. So I can let you guys like tag up on Resi or have the Psychonauts conversation. But yeah, what a fucking game.
I will say this before we get to Psychonauts, that I think it's the first game, going back, I think it's the first time that it's a game that is by no means nowhere near my number one. And even though Psychonauts is my number one, I still don't think I would be upset if Resi did like take number one.
That's kind of where I'm at now, is that I love both of them so much that, like, you know, if I was voted down 3-1 on whatever I end up going for, I wouldn't be mad.
Yeah. But with that said, Psychonauts 2 is the best game that I played this year. Like, just bar none. Just like, not every game, and Resident Evil Village certainly wouldn't qualify as this. Not every game needs to have a heart to it. It needs to tell a story. It needs to have themes that relate to you on an emotional level, on a human level, whatever the case may be. But at the same time, it's really nice when those games do it and they do hit you, because games are that medium that, and, you know, we certainly over the past 10 years or so, we have crossed that threshold now where games are doing that and they are able to be mature experiences and, you know, actually tell these stories, but still in a way that it is a game. You know, the purpose of a game is you have to play it. There are rules, there are mechanics, but we are weaving these stories and these themes that relate to us in a real physical sense as human beings as well. And, you know, the original Psychonauts did that pretty well, but the marriage that they get this time, where, you know, part of it is, hey, this is a game that's now 20 years later, and, you know, again, I played through most of the original Psychonauts this year. It's not the easy experience. It certainly has aged in a lot of ways. It's still playable, it's still fun, but it's, you know, it does show the wrinkles and the warts and all. But Psychonauts 2, the main thing it did for me more than anything else is, like, keep that level of creativity, of heart, of warmth, of telling, you know, exploring these anguishes that people have, the emotional baggage that these people have, but bring up the kind of gameplay side of it and make it just an engaging experience. And it does that. I still think there are probably areas where they could improve in that kind of thing. You know, Double Fine as a company, in terms of like the actual bell to bell making a game as a game to play, they're not the best at that, and that's never going to be the forte. But because they do everything else at, you know, a level above that most other people do, I can accept the platforming being like an 8 out of 10, because the story and how all of that and the characters is like a fucking 12 out of 10. So it kind of balances itself out.
Can I just ask a quick question? And honestly, I really don't want to upset anyone by asking this. I just want to know, like, from looking at this game, how off-putting is the art style? Because
Not at all.
Not remotely.
to
Not
look
at
at
all.
it,
If it enhances it, if anything.
I don't like it to look at. And I think if I played it, then that would change probably, because I'd maybe enjoy the game. But I look at it and I look at the characterization.
No, it's actually perfect.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I don't like the way it looks from the outside.
It's kind of what's the best
I think in motion it does look better.
Yeah.
It kind of because I can kind of see looking at those characters how you think. I mean, I think we've already made I think I made the Nickelodeon comparison. I think we've already made the Pixar comparison. If I could pull another pop culture reference, it kind of looks like that trend that's kind of dead now of kind of weird kind of gothic stop motion, like your Nightmare Before Christmas, your Corpse Bride, that kind of thing. Characters with real exaggerated characteristics. Things do have a little bit of a creepy edge to them as well. I think that is intentional. But in motion, I mean, I think the game looks stunning. I mean, I really do.
Do you know what I think Psychonauts is? I think Psychonauts is if you took Tim Burton and Salvador Dali and got them to make a game or a film or something together. I think you would end up like at a crossroads of those two styles of like the kind of gothic style of Tim Burton and the sheer surrealism of Dali. I think you would end up with something like that.
Yeah. God, I think Burton and Schaefer. Now there's a tag team that would probably produce a pretty fucking interesting video game, I'd say.
Yeah. What's Bubble War gonna do about it?
The great Dali was one of my favorite World Heavyweight champions of all time.
Lots of Dalis.
I kind of am in it. Like I kind of feel like, as Mark was saying in the last sort of round of debates with Hitman and Death's Door. I mean, this is one of those ones where really, if you put a gun to my head and said pick a game of the year, it's really tough, because I do think
you'd be like, just shoot, boss.
It's like, I've had enough. I don't want to be here anymore. It's like because like Hitman, I had my issues with it, but I still think it's absolutely one of the best games of the year, deserving third. But I had my issues with it, and with these two, it's like I really didn't like. Do I have like really, really, really niggly little bugbears that are not even really worth talking about? Do I have some of them? Yeah, probably. But in the grand scheme of things, do I have a thing that I would say I didn't actually really like that? That's the one thing I didn't like about Psychonauts and Resident Evil. The answer is probably no. I don't think I do. Like the combat isn't super in depth in Psychonauts, but also I think they do an excellent job of balancing it to the point that the combat kind of serves as just a bit of a mix-up to kind of give you a break from the puzzles and the platforming, and you've had a extended story period. They pace the game so well. It's almost kind of like, I almost feel like I probably would have enjoyed Guardians a teensy bit more if they treated it like that, like Psychonauts do, where it's like, we're not going to emphasize this third person shooting too much because it's not that great. So I feel like if they'd scaled it back a little more, like Psychonauts gets that balance perfectly right. It's like, here's a little combat arena to break up. You just did a long puzzle section, have a little bit of combat. It's not going to be a half-hour puzzle combat section because we don't really have the depth for that. It never outstays its welcome. So
the thing with the combat though is the kind of flip side of that, or the Double Fine side of that, is that okay, the combat isn't that in depth, but the actual enemies and what they represent, that's
so interesting.
Where the strength in it is. It's like, hey, here is like a representation of anxiety. Here's a representation of anger. That's what a Double Fine game is. That's where the charm of those games and the strength of those games is. And like, hey, here are like the characterization of these fears and trepidations and stuff that you have, not so much the combat and how you engage.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and even a couple of hours in, that stuff is actually surprising you, because like in the first hour, you're like, oh, here are sensors. Oh, okay, I get it. That's a cute little thing. Oh, here is regrets who carry the little anvil. It's like, oh yeah, that's clever. And then when they unveiled the panic attack enemy, I'm like, oh, that's actually good, because it's like, it's too fast to attack. So you have to get the slowdown ability in the game to properly handle a panic attack.
God, I didn't even thought that. That's so and again, I think I said this like in the very first podcast. Some of this stuff, it is like sitting here and very plainly reading a sheet of great lyrics. If we just sit here and describe it, it might not be as impactful as doing it and playing it and looking at it and playing it. You
have to
experience
launch yourself
it
into it. Yeah.
Do you know, Barry? Can you recite "Stairway to Heaven" for me? I want to see how that sounds.
Yeah.
No, the only song I know the lyrics to offhand is probably "Hero," as Dave probably remembers from Carrot Weekend. But
well, the Chad Kroger Heroes.
How do I not know that? No, Mr. Enrique Iglesias, sir.
Right, I
yeah.
see.
But yes, Hero
anyway.
by Chad Kroger featuring Josie Scott. I have that CD single somewhere. In my head.
I've had that song in my head for the last 3 weeks, honestly.
He's not going to stand here and wait, folks. Just saying.
No.
So I feel like we've kind of we've done a nice solid round here talking about how hard it is to pick between these
we have
two.
not progressed in any way in determining
the thing
which one
as
to go
well
with.
as we also know, because of what Mark has said before, I think we can fairly well assume which of these two games will do the best in the poll.
Hang on, we shouldn't even take that into account, though.
No. I'm not. But it's not exactly going to be suspenseful either.
It does feel. I do feel like Psychonauts 2 is like the biggest game this year that does. Obviously, the major publications have reviewed it, but I still feel like there's just something about fucking Psychonauts where
people aren't talking about it enough.
People just don't talk about it,
Yeah.
Listen, this was a big fig game. This game was not going to get made if not for the hardcores who liked the first one, literally paying to get it made. It was not going to be made.
Not only that, but 20 odd years ago, and I was like, I'll just fucking finance this thing myself.
I feel of the big contenders, it's the one that maybe is least appreciated if you have to play it like a reviewer would play it.
Yes, rushing through it and trying to critically break down the individual elements rather than the whole. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Granted, I think like Hitman, do you know what I mean? You miss some of the special stuff by not doing absolutely everything. Yeah. But with Resident Evil, you get pretty much everything that game is trying to do route one. You know what I mean? As you know, Barry, because you did it, hunting down some of the optional treasures and things like that can be pretty cool. But you maybe that, I'm not saying that is a factor for us, but I'm saying that is maybe why and not as many people are talking about it, is because it's a game, because of the things it's dealing with, the way it deals with them, and things like you described there, Barry, with the panic attack, that it probably benefits from you only being able to play or wanting to play maybe 1 or 2 hours at a time, going away, thinking about it, coming back to it later, playing a little bit more, rather than you have to play 30 hours over this weekend and have 2,000 words on my desk by Monday.
Right.
Yeah.
Sounds like the panic attack section in and of itself.
Yeah, because they are two different games. They serve two very different masters. Resident Evil, it's a AAA game. It has a higher production level to it. It has these flashy set pieces, and and it ticks all the boxes for them. It does all of those extremely well. And Psychonauts 2 it's still a great looking game, but obviously it doesn't have the kind of high production level. It doesn't have those flashy set pieces, but it doesn't need them. I don't think the game is better by having them. It does everything that it needs to do and does it extremely well. I can see why someone would probably go to Resident Evil over Psychonauts, because it is the more immediate, it is the more visceral. I don't want to make a music comparison of hey, you'll listen to this pop song because it's more immediately accessible than listening to name whatever fucking Mars Volta album that takes 50 listens to get. But I don't even think Psychonauts 2 is even that dense. It explores those themes, but I don't think it's a real what does this mean? Like a Genesis Noir?
No,
it's still pretty
from the points that you made, I was about to jump in and make that counterpoint. It doesn't sound that deep.
No, it's not. No,
I'm not saying it's you need to sit and ponder hidden meaning in it, but I think it does benefit from digesting, because it's so much, not even the messages of it, but even just you're being bombarded with so much cool stuff, whether it is the issues they're trying to talk about, the sensory nature of it, whether it's how a certain area looks, or the music, or the different gnarly environments you go into. Is there's so much to appreciate about it, that having time to breathe in between each section makes you appreciate it more than if you were just doing a kind of slapdash, I gotta get through this shit.
This because when we talk about how these are two excellent games, but they're so completely different, apples and oranges. That's not just one of them's a colorful collectathon and one of them's a first-person horror game. They're you play them differently. You can they're completely different lengths, but they are both the correct length. That's what's kind of hard about this, is that we're not just talking about games from two completely different genres. you play them differently, you experience them differently, they could not really be much more different, you know. And they're also on two completely different scales as well. Again, it's not that Psychonauts is some completely weird unsigned underground itch.io piece of material that we all unearth, but relative to Resident Evil, it kind of may as well be, you know.
I would say the production budgets, there's probably an extra O on the ends, you know,
possibly.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think, because Psychonauts does look at, and it's quite big as well. Some of the areas are quite expensive, but I'm sure it would be, you know, put to shame.
I will say, like, for me, I need more games in the future to have the main antagonist tell their story through an "It's a Small World" cutscene and extended
so
level.
Good.
Like, it's just the best fucking way I've ever had a villain tell their story, you know. And it also, like, it is a game that it is twisty, but I didn't see the twist. I did not see the twist in terms of like where the bad guy had been the whole time. And I guess I probably should have, because it's fucking Psychonauts and they do some weird shit like that. But I was like, oh, you son of a bitch, you completely took me by surprise there. Like, it has all those kind of compelling components to it, and it you know, it has its twists, it has its big reveals, it has a great like villain who, you know, is justified. You know, it's a slight, you know, cliched at this point, tortured villain, but there is the motivation for he's why he's doing the things that he's doing, but you can also kind of understand why he is the way he is. But at the same time, he's been a bit of a dick about it, so you still got to deal with him, and the things that he wants to do could create like this bigger catastrophe that has to be dealt with. And you know, but it has all of these moving plates, but at no point does it either feel contrived or overwhelming or loses sense of what the story is meant to be. Like, it all, you know, flows in a consistent fashion while spinning these kind of multiple plates. Where, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, like Resi Evil is like, hey, your baby's been stolen. Well, your baby's now been dismembered. Well, now you got to go get the parts of your baby.
There's a lot more to it than that, though. The individual like subsets of that are just so like the dismembered baby is like the reason to send you down those 4 different paths and face off with those 4 different bosses, but like it really is way more than just reassemble the baby.
The characterization of each act and the bosses within each act is way beyond what you probably would have expected. And it's even within this own franchise, it's way beyond like Nemesis. I've never understood the iconic status of Wesker. Like, he just seems like, okay, he's a guy in a fucking Matrix jacket who never dies. I've never had any, to be honest, like, I love 4 like everyone does. I've never really gotten Resident Evil as a story ever, even the most acclaimed ones ever, until 7.
I don't think there's much to get, in fairness.
But yeah, but I feel like there is, because the people who love it fucking love it, and they love it.
They're really fucking dumb. All right, there's
nothing. This is some slander.
They're dumb in the way that they need to be for that series. They're dumb, schlocky, fun horror, in the same way that 8 is. You know, like like fucking, you know, there are elements of Resident Evil Village that I watch, and I feel like at points I could be playing House of the Dead in terms of it's a horror game, but it knows how fucking dumb it is and it leans into it. And I'm all for it. I'm even like, as much as I don't care about horror and I don't enjoy horror that understands what it is and leans into it and is really dumb about it. And, you know, like Danny O'Dwyer was singing the praises and talking about like the thing that he enjoys how much is just how fucking dumb it is and how it leans into it. You know,
heroically dumb.
I can fully get on board with that and I can appreciate that. And like Resident Evil for me is at its best when it is doing that, because when it does go po-faced, when it goes into whatever the fuck Resident Evil 6 was trying to do, and 5 for the most part, except for when Wesker was being Wesker, it falls flat on its face. And, you know, 7, I guess, is the interesting thing because it is more serious, but I think it works because it's pulling so many like of the indie horror games, first-person horror games from the last 10 years that you pull enough of those influences, you should be all right. But, you know, it still obviously takes the craft to pull it off, and they managed to do that. And then they just go bonkers with Resident Evil with Village.
Lads, we are no closer to figuring out what Mark and Barry wants as their number 1.
Oh, I know what my number 1 is.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Dave, have you said what your number 1 is?
I don't know.
Okay. I thought you were about to say, oh my
genuinely-
God, I know
Try and
one of these
fucking gaslight
fuckers.
me. I know what my number one is.
Sorry,
On
yeah, I
this
forgot.
side of the conversation, I think with cards on the table, Mark is Psychonauts, I'm Resident
Psychonauts.
Evil Village, right?
Yeah.
And it is really down to the pair of you to decide where you kind of fall, where the chips land. And you know what? As silly and ridiculous as the story of Resident Evil Village is, I think Moreau is one of the best, like, tragic figures in a video game this year. Like, I do think there is a real empathy and sadness around that character who is so clearly the one that no one wants around. So clearly, Heisenberg just has such little time and respect for even being in the same place as him. And he just wants so much to be part of something. You can see why he gets swept up by Mother Miranda. You can see why all of this time is invested, like, going along with these, like, nefarious cunts that he's surrounded with in this scheme, right? You can see why it happens to him, and you feel so bad for him. And then he turns into, like, a giant fish monster. And then he goes Resident Evil, right? But up to that point, the Moreau shit, I was like, okay, they've done that really well. That is I really care about that.
And they strike the balance really well because they drop enough hints about that character and how he feels and the contempt that the other characters have for him, but they don't even lay the contempt on too thick. There's little drops of it, but the main thing is, especially with Heisenberg in particular, is that they're all conspiring against each other, and they don't even really register Moreau, and when they do, they have contempt, but really they don't even care. They're too busy planning how to stab each other in the back, which I think is really well done.
And then
there
when
is
you get to
craftsmanship
Heisenberg
in the stupidity, you know what I mean? There is craftsmanship in that story.
And when you get to Heisenberg, it's so obvious that he's quite happy to have let Ethan run around and fuck everything up this whole time because he hates the whole bunch of pricks that he was standing with in that basement at the start of the game. He's like, fuck all these people. I know Ethan's going to go and take them all out, and I'm just going to let it happen. You know, I am the one, or I feel like the ultimate nemesis. And then ultimately it's Heisenberg's delusion that he is the ultimate nemesis and the number one sort of pawn of Mother Miranda and all of this that leads him to the kind of arrogance at the end of the game where he believes, and the game makes you feel like this is the big final showdown with Heisenberg. This is the big last boss of the game, but his own delusion fucks him up. And then when you take him out, he's not even the last boss of the game, which I think is brilliant. Like a really subtly done little dig at his own delusions that he's not even the final boss, despite this big climactic battle that you have with him. I think it's very smart characterization. I don't think you could say anything about the doll section or even, the Lady Dimitrescu. Like, she's so memorable and, she immediately became a meme and had massive impact. But her section of the game, despite how cool and gothic and creepy and amazing it felt, like, in terms of the story, didn't really bear that much of a huge outcome on the game. But I think the last two kind of sections of the collect the 4 bits of baby Mark are very good story-wise. But it is also completely bonkers and out to lunch at the same time. But it's done in an intelligent way,
It's two things there that you mentioned as well. I think it's probably a little bit of an underrated moment that could have gotten a mention in that category. That scene early on where they like catch you and they bring you to this big chamber where you get the reveal of all the characters. What I love about that is that, okay, you know Lady D at this point, okay, she's big, tall, scary lady, and you see Heisenberg and you're like, okay, yeah, that's a Resident Evil character. And then like the doll comes into frame. I'm like, what is this? And then the frog monster comes in. I'm like, what's happening? What game is this? These all look like they're from different games. Like it's so
again,
funny.
it lends into that idea I was saying that it feels like a series or like a succession of films all in one without feeling overwrought or like it outstays its welcome or anything like that.
Yeah, Resident Evil 8 is the ultimate, and I want this to be the trend for the next 5 years. Resident Evil 8 is the ultimate. Fucking figure out what your game is, figure out what your story is, and then really intensely think about what your runtime for your game should be.
Pack
Like,
get
it in, roller coaster, boom, 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 boom. If you want to be The Witcher, fine, be The Witcher. But if you're going to be a tight single player experience, hit the 5 hours, hit the 8 hours, do something like that.
Please, Barry, for the love of God, don't encourage more games to be The Witcher. The fact that The Witcher could even do it is a fucking minor miracle.
Even they can't fucking do that anymore.
Yeah, they couldn't even do it again. Yeah. Right. Anyway.
We know. Look. Me and Mark know where we are.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's you two fuckers, right?
Look,
Yeah,
I'm
this is the
starting to
tough part.
I'm starting to lean a certain way.
So am I. Yeah, I think I know.
I think
I
we're
think I
leaning
know.
the same way.
You think we're leaning the same way?
I think so. I think we're leaning the
Do
same
you want to
way.
do a 3, 2, 1 and say it?
Oh yeah, that'll be adorable, Barry.
Okay.
Okay. Right. Okay. Right after 3. All right.
Okay.
We're saying our number 1, right?
Yes.
Okay. Right. 1, 2, 3. Resident Evil.
Psychonauts.
Yes, mate.
Okay. Fuck it. Like I
was convinced you were going to say the same game.
Barry, the last 10 minutes talks about all the cool stuff he loves in Resident Evil does. I'm pretty sure I've made a decision. Psychonauts. Barry essentially talks me into moving slightly to the side of being in the middle.
That's funny.
God, that is the good stuff right there. Yeah, I feel like, and I've been mulling it over, like if I had finished Psychonauts before I submitted my written list, it probably would be 1. It would probably be 1. And even before I finished it still made it to 3 or whatever I put it at.
Again, I'm movable on this. I have never been like, even when I got to Hitman versus Doom, there was stuff I was able to go. The multiplayer was wank in Doom. I was able to go, well, this map, Marrakesh drove me crazy at first, or Colorado was dog shit, or something like that. I was able to pick stuff apart, but there's nothing about either of these 2 games that I don't love.
Gonna have to go to the people.
Well, this is the thing, right?
No,
because here's the thing. Yeah, it comes to this. Either one of you has to make a change, or we go to the people's vote, and we all know Resident Evil is going to end up winning on the popular vote. Like it's just that's how it's going to be. If you look at just the using that as a small snapshot of the common consensus of what this year has been, that's going to be the case.
Here's the thing, though. Imagine it was Psychonauts.
Oh my god, that would be amazing.
The funniest possible thing.
There's not a fucking hope.
Or if it was
like
Crave.
Jack, I would be willing to give you the deeds to my house if Psychonauts has won this poll.
You need to open that document right now.
Psychonauts didn't come within an arse's roar of it can't. There's no.
I will sell your house back to you.
If I'm trying to sell Dave on Psychonauts here, one thing
you don't have to. He already loves it.
I don't know, but as a voter, I have to win his vote. One thing I will say that we've under discussed. I do think it's fair to say it's probably true of both these games. I think the gameplay is great in both, but it is probably second fiddle to the other stuff, right? But I do think in Psychonauts, like, I love when you get to the quarry and the game already up to that point when you're just exploring around the mother lobe kind of has like collectathon-y kind of elements. And then you get to the quarry, it's like, oh no, we're a collectathon. Oh, you can go explore. You can go off the beaten path, doesn't even begin to describe it. It's full on, might as well be Banjo-Kazooie or something like that. With like really fun, satisfying.
But like when you get back in the village in Resident Evil Village, and you can then open all the doors with bits and pieces that you picked up through.
It's not a comparable.
It is good. He's not wrong. It is good, but it's not the same.
It's not the same.
It's like
I haven't played it, but that is exactly.
And even like it's like it leans in and tells you that, and then like a little while later you get to the campsite and it's like the game leans in even more and goes, you want to fuck around?
Yeah,
it's like, you can fuck around here.
And I love when you get like the quarry is kind of a like normal kind of place. It's like here's the Psychonauts base, here's some cliffs you can go explore, here's a little wooded area, and then you get to the questionable area, which is basically Gravity Falls without the license, and there's all this weird shit in it. And like I said,
just
it's like
the questionable area, huge
it's
pop.
so great. And every bit of signage has a question mark on it, so it's like a camping site. I love that. But it's like like the first couple of hours of the game, it's kind of like a fairly traditional platformer with like a little bit of collectathon elements, and then like it opens up and it's like, oh no, we've got not quite open world, but we've got a big ass open area you can explore, go off the beaten path, try this little platforming challenge, see if you can do this like wall jump puzzle thing to try and get an extra life. And it's like that stuff is so satisfying, and I was loving it early on, and then about halfway through I found myself kind of surprised. I'm kind of surprised at how much fun I'm having navigating around the world and doing the collectathon stuff, and leveling up is really not like necessary to win, but like
think maybe like 20 years after the peak of the
That.
collectathon. That you've seen it all. You don't like none of these kind of games can appeal to me in that way.
Yeah.
Where like sure you'll have fun playing it, but none of them will appeal to you in the ways like I actually want to collect everything. You weren't fucking doing that for ukulele, Barry. I can tell you that.
No.
Oh,
and
God, no.
And it's like, and it really was because it was. Sorry, I pressed the wrong button there. It was like one of those things where most of the exploring and the getting of the trinkets and the collectathon stuff is kind of done in the name of leveling up and getting new side cards and things like that you can upgrade your abilities, shoot more without having to recharge. You don't need to do any of that stuff in like a serious game. It's nice to have it. It's nice to hit harder, have more health, all these other stuff. But I was doing it just because I was like, I want to complete this challenge. There's a floating thingy up there and I want it. Why do I want it? Because I want to conquer this objective just to say that I did it. You know what I mean? It's like, so it kind of scratches a really fun, not this good, but it almost 3D Mario style thing of I just want to get every little thing in the world just for the fun of getting it.
I felt like that about getting the photos in Resident Evil Village. Like you can get the photos of like the different beasts. You can get like the White Raven and shit.
Yeah.
I think that was really, really cool. That added like another element that I wasn't necessarily expecting in that game too.
Psychonauts 2, it does really throw you off the scent as well, because you do think like the first sort of 2 hours or so, and I think I mentioned this before, like the whole casino section, you feel like you're going to be taking on this kind of big romping adventure, and you're going to go from like, like one kind of like not Hitman, but this kind of like espionage adventure like sort of thing. But then it completely like goes in a different direction afterwards, but it doesn't, the game doesn't lessen because of it, like, because I was thinking going into Psychonauts 2 that it was going to be like, hey, Raz is now a Psychonaut, and like we're just going to go off and do all these kind of different adventures as him as a Psychonaut. But it doesn't, it really leans back into the family and the heart and just a real kind of personal exploration of Raz and then everything it does, obviously, with like the main antagonist as well. But at the same time, it's like an N64 collectathon as well, and it pulls all of the things that we loved about those games as well.
Lads, fuck it, I'll switch.
Got his ass.
I was like, I'm literally, I had moved to 5149 and now I'm back to 5149 the other way. So fuck it, because we're going to go another hour here, and I'll flip back and forth another bunch of times, and like we know what's going to happen if we're locked as well. And I think these games deserve the honor of getting a majority vote here.
Yeah, but that's only and you're only saying that because it is locked,
and you're only saying that because it's on.
No, but I am. It needs to be pointed out. Like that does suck, because like you do.
I've also spent the last 10 plus hours arguing for Psychonauts over Resident Evil in almost every category. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is more
How many
authentic
wins
how I feel.
How many wins has Psychonauts got? If you think Psychonauts,
yeah, but then you're like, do you know what I mean? This is disingenuous
win.
because you're on the losing side of this. Do you know what I mean?
No. I mean, fuck off, right? And I actually mean that. Like, yes, fair enough. But like every single category that you mentioned, I try and or strategically think of like different games and different categories and different areas or whatever to think of. Like, just thrown everything into Psychonauts in the previous categories. If it deserves it, then fine.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, how it won Best Music when I want to listen to some of the music, beyond me. But fine. I just think I just think it sucks that you would go against it because you don't want to take it. That's not like the sole deciding factor. But it was the first thing that Barry and Mark both said when you said Resident Evil was like, oh, but we know where it will go if it goes to the people, right?
Yeah.
So,
But if you wanted to vote, I don't think
I could take the coward.
Vote for it,
Dude, I could take the coward's way out here and leave it locked and let it go, and it's not my decision.
Yeah, he also wouldn't have to make a decision either.
I wouldn't have to make a decision at all. Like, this is me committing to actually making a decision. Like, it's the harder thing to do. Like the easy way out is to not and to leave it locked, like we've done before, to get out of having to make the call. But I have spoken for literally hours at this point about how special Psychonauts is, and if I had enough, like as much time, if like I had played both of these games at the same time, it probably would have been, I would be further apart in favoring one over the other. But again, that's something we'll never know, because
I will just, and I might regret saying this, but I'll throw it out there anyway.
Change to Hitman 3?
No. We have, we did 1 year. We did 1 year.
Or like Jack, you inexplicably changed to Boomerang X now.
Yeah, I will back Mark. If you want Boomerang X to be Game of the Year, Mark, I will back you right now.
We did 1 year have a joint first place.
Look, give it. Look, I'd rather.
Which by the way,
No.
I still think is ridiculous.
I never want that to happen again.
No, I don't at all.
Okay,
I would actually rather Psychonauts 1, but also, fuck you, Super Mario Odyssey should have won.
No, fuck you.
No, you're dead right, Mark. Dead right.
Mario Odyssey should have won. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Jesus Christ.
yeah.
No, I'm not doing this again.
Right.
Let's just make the decision now. Okay, so Mario won, Last of Us 2 won last year.
I do not feel as strongly about.
Last of Us wasn't even a split decision, you bastard.
It was just a wrong one, baby.
Yeah, like I feel like I
he
don't know. The thing is, I don't know if this is a wrong decision or not. But like, yeah, but I don't know. I guess that the fear of the unknown is more for me.
Ultimately, what has persuaded me both times to flip out of the middle are persuasive arguments. Like that is the end of it. Is like, you know, I started moving over towards Resident. Like it's like I opened this chat by talking about how absolutely torn I was. So it was always going to be a hairline difference between the two of them for me, which is why I've you know, flip-flopped on it.
Yeah,
and what it was both times was getting impassioned discussion from you first about Resident Evil, which reminded me about all the things I liked about that, and then hearing from the two boys reminding me, it's like, fuck man, yeah, like Psychonauts is so fucking good and so special, and like so like yeah.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like that's what it is ultimately. Like if I've given the impression that it's just like, because fuck it, I don't want to go to the poll because I think like, no,
that's the impression I got from the other two that were arguing.
If I were to say fuck it, I wanted to go to the poll because of like I've gone firmly with what I think the result of the poll would be. So like, do you know what I mean?
So you at one point you're like, I feel like Resident Evil, back and forth flip.
But there's no sense because then I might as well have stuck with Resident Evil because I think Resident Evil would definitely win.
Dave
the poll.
did also
so
change...
me flipping to Psychonauts means I actually do. It's not because, you know what I mean.
And he did also change right after me. We were just talking about like this thing we haven't even discussed yet, which was the whole like collectathon aspect of it. Like he did change right after I said, I'm going to give you the hard sell now, Dave. You know, like I cut the promo for it. You know,
and he reminded me he's evoking, like he's hitting all the Dave Ryan high spots there. You want to talk about like lobbying for a vote, like talking about like Banjo-Kazooie is in my top 5 of all time, and it does that better than maybe any game has done since in terms of the collectathon stuff, which is why I brought up what a miserable fucking failure Yooka-Laylee was at that same idea. It's not a fucking easy thing to do.
So is Silent Hill though.
What?
Like, didn't you say Silent Hill was like up there with your favorite games of all time as well?
Yes, it's probably number 2.
Right. Okay.
Silent Hill 2.
What?
But are you comparing that to Resident Evil Village? Because that is fucking, again, apples and oranges.
Yeah, but it's still
that's like Alien and Aliens.
It's still it's still
it really is.
It is
still in the genre though.
It's not. It may as well not be me. Like if you fucking played.
I think that's another debate. I think that's another debate.
I could give you a fucking hour-long polemic on that one, but we don't have that kind of time because I'm hungry. Which I will say
the real reason.
Didn't factor the choice. I have a yard of Oreo here I got for Christmas that I could snack into if I needed to keep going, filibustering this shit. But yeah, ultimately what won me over was Barry in particular, lobbying hard for the vote. So I think that's where we're at.
Yeah. Just all the things he lobbied with are also in Resident Evil as well. But you know, what are you gonna do? They are.
They're not nearly as like, especially you made some incredible arguments about Resident Evil Village like early on, which is why again I moved 5149 that direction. But like if you're going to try and compare the collectibles in those two games, that is a fucking losing battle, my friend. Yes, they both have collectibles. yeah, that is where the comparisons begin and end, my friend. And you know what? I appreciate the goal of it because I know by the smirk you knew.
Of course, I'm at the stage where I'm just scrapping. This is just dirty tactics.
Jack
I know Silent Hill 2 is nothing like
it's
this.
the 12th round. He's punching below the belt.
Listen,
Jack is just like, oh, and you played Psychonauts 2 with a controller. Well, guess what else you can play with a controller?
Hey, that's my like fifth argument from now. So
yeah. It's like shit. Strike that one off the list.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I just like the reason I started this was because I really didn't want it to be just because you didn't want it to be decided by the polls. No. That was it.
No. Again, especially like if you think about the logic of it and what game probably would have won, it would have made no sense for me to switch towards Psychonauts to vote against the game I was currently sitting with.
Yep.
Right. Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to read it out now.
All right.
Are we locked or is Barry going to swerve me again?
Oh, Barry, please. That would be hilarious.
We
Actually,
really
funny
not
if
getting
not.
Death's Door on. Not gonna happen.
Let me tell you about
little
new
crow,
Pokemon Snap.
Little crow, he goes to the shop and he's like, "How you doing, shopkeeper? Can I have some soup?" Wait a minute, you're dead, and a squid is propping you up. It's good stuff. Right. Anyway.
Okay,
So-
Barry, I got 5 words for you. Okay, welcome to the Burj Khalifa. All right, now let me tell you.
Bring a stop to this. Officially, Game of the Year 2021. In third place, Hitman 3. In second place, Psychonauts 2. And in first place, Resident Evil. No, wait. Sorry.
Are you taking the piss?
I'm cutting the podcast
you're
there.
not.
It's
You're
done.
not.
It's done.
Sorry, I literally read.
It's done.
I was just.
It's over.
Could you imagine if I
Evil.
actually did that sincerely? It was literally the fact.
Resident Evil wins.
Lads, we've been doing this too long now. My brain is going to mush. Sorry,
Oh,
literally,
Oh yes.
literally the two besides Psychonauts. Just my brain just went.
I
This
see
room
it. I
is
see
warm.
where you
We've
went
been
wrong
going
there.
on- Yeah, right. Fuck.
No, I mean, like,
take two.
no one's hearing
we're
this,
keeping
by
it
the
on.
way.
Oh, all right. Okay, cool.
No, I mean, like, no one's hearing this section. I'm cutting it where you said
Yeah,
Resident
that's it.
Evil
That's what
Village
you meant.
wins,
Right,
and then I'm
okay.
just gonna play that.
Oh,
Yeah, but I have the video recording, so they'll hear the real version.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
delete
Fuck
that
it.
every
Right.
day you upload that.
Right. Okay. Let's do take two on that then.
No way. It's done.
Game
It
of
takes
the
2-1. What?
Yeah.
No,
That was a shock. No, this is all staying. It's too funny.
Ladies and gentlemen, when I tell you that video games have a problem with numbering and naming sequels, this is the exact kind of situation that was foretold. Anyway, Game of the Year 2021 for realsies this time. In third, Hitman 3. In second, Resident Evil Village. And in first, Psychonauts 2.
Good list. Good list. 3
Oh,
excellent
boy.
video games.
I mean, that is the funniest thing that has happened on this.
That couldn't have gone any better, to be quite honest.
Because like it was like, do you know, like the 3, 2, 1, and they're literally in that order as well on our list for people who can't see it. Is like literally Hitman 3, and then it says Psychonauts 2, 1, and then Resident Evil Village 2. So
Oh
my
yeah,
brain just-
I can see where. Yeah,
my brain just went.
It has also
That's
been
why
a very
Village
long
is
debate.
better number for a sequel. Just saying, doesn't even have it in there.
Well, yeah, it's
Psychonauts
8th.
wins.
It's 8th. It's the 8th best game.
Well, yeah, Resident Evil VIII. Right.
Large.
Psychonauts 2 1. Congratulations, Psychonauts. And I think in some ways it actually is an appropriate finish to Game of the Year, where like in so many categories, fucking Psychonauts 2 kicks in the door and steals it, or at least finishes high. So yeah, that's cool.
I wasn't when we started doing the Game of the Year recordings, I wasn't, fully aware of where you two were. I know obviously you spoke about Dave on like the last episode before we started the recordings about that, you really were getting to Game of the Year. I definitely didn't know like where Barry was at. So, I was hoping that Psychonauts 2 would like make it into the top 3, but I wasn't expecting it to, well, basically win. And I'm very happy.
What kind of world are we in that the game that won Game of the Year was like a story-heavy game, and Mark was the champion for it the longest?
I know, right?
It's the fucking Twilight Zone, lads.
I just wish Tim Schafer had made Life is Strange. I might be.
Well, I mean, like,
do you know what, Barry? You actually could cut about half an hour out of this going, this is the guy that made Grim Fandango, and like, boom, done, sold.
Psychonauts 2 is definitely not just a story game. You know,
Yeah, but it's not. But it's like it's one of the big
Let's
things.
not cut
that
any
I
more
love so much.
promos on
Yes.
Psychonauts.
Right.